unfavorited. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that because of capitalism. I'll be capitalisming today. So I'm not sure if I do, I'll probably do a quick video announcement on TikTok to let folks know that'll be over there. Please consider following me on Favorited. Also, the link is in my bio. We are streaming on YouTube. Please consider following me on YouTube. Subscribe over there. Drop a comment, share it, like it. You know the drill. So the more opportunities we have to share our message, we will do that. Also, join our Discord. The link is working. I checked it this morning. Also, there's some really cool items in our merch store, including hashtag I am radical. And I want to let Scary Stroke Dad know that because he won the contest for submitting Our Schools Are Not Your Church, that shirt shipped yesterday. So, my friend, you should have that within a day or so, and I'd be psyched to know what you think about it. But again, that shirt is in our merch store as well. Also, there's still a shirt that's in there that will support our friends Brett and Nikki Cross. I don't know if you guys know this, and there's been really no reporting on this. There was a threat against Brett's school, his kid's school yesterday in Uvalde. It ended up being just a threat, but the way in which the Uvalde Sheriff's Department and Police Department handled it was just disgusting. And I was on with Brett for a while last night on his live to try to cheer him up. So if you see him out in the TikTok streets today, be sure to send him some love. We would really appreciate that. So I think that kind of covers it. We could potentially have a bit of a shift to our programming today. I had mentioned in our promo video for today's show about our new friend Julia Hubbard, who is a Schmeck's trafficking survivor, and what a story she has. Originally, she was going to join us at 9 o'clock this morning. We may end up shifting that to Facts After Dark tonight, just because there's so much going on this morning with the SCOTUS ruling and a few other things. So I'll let you know. If that does happen, we'll do that whenever she can join us. If not, we'll do it tonight at 6 p.m. If not, then if Julia's available, then we'll do it tomorrow, because I think it's really, really important that we share her story because so many people will be impacted. So that's what's going on. There's a lot. So a few things I want to kind of cover off on first. I just want to remind everybody that as of this morning, the national average for a price of a gallon of gas is $3.12. That's down 10 cents from the same date a year ago. The average price for a gallon of eggs, a dozen of eggs, is $3. The inflation rate is 2.8%, up slightly, but still within the range that the Fed likes it, between 2.5 and 3.5%. Stock market continues to break records, closing again above 43,000. And the unemployment rate is at 4.1%, which again remains historically low. And as a reminder, Joe Biden is the only president in American history to have positive job growth every single month of his administration. That is the economy that the Trump administration is inheriting. Remember, they promised you that they were going to lower prices, end inflation, drill baby drill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know that they lied to you, but you haven't learned that lesson yet. So everybody, tapping is clapping and sharing is caring. Please, if you guys could help us get out to the FYP, would really, really appreciate that. We have a feeling that TikTok is kind of waiting to see what happens with U.S. consumers and just the app in general in the U.S., which is probably why we don't see our videos. I've got 106,000 followers and I can barely get 1,000 views, which is weird, but that's been pretty consistent for a while now. So who knows? But the more engagement you guys can offer us, the better. So if everybody could fill the like bar and share it to 50 of your favorite friends, or 10 or 5 or whomever it is, that will help. All right. So I want to just talk about a couple of things first, as we have more committee hearings for the nominees to the Trump cabinet. And it's pretty disturbing when you really start to listen, because like we talked about yesterday, and many times, it's not Trump that we should fear. It's the people behind him. It's the people connected to Project 2025, because what we're seeing is Project 2025 being enacted. Like we told you that was going to happen. I mean, Russ Vought, who's the author of Project 2025, will now be the director of the Office of Management and Budget, because these people will get confirmed. Pam Bondi, election denier, is going to be confirmed. Pete Hegseth, the most unqualified person to ever be nominated for a cabinet position, Secretary of Defense, arguably the most important cabinet position there is. He's going to be confirmed. Kash Patel, FBI director, is going to get confirmed. Climate deniers will get confirmed for the Department of Energy and the EPA, et cetera, et cetera. So there was an exchange with our boy Bernie over the yesterday. I think it was in a hearing, and I'll just play you this because I think it says a lot. Scott Bessent, by the way, who's a George Soros protege, has been nominated by Trump to be the Secretary of the Treasury, and he was being questioned by Bernie yesterday because, again, this just proves again that Republicans hate America. So you can listen to this.
So you don't think we should change the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour?
No, sir.
Okay. Right now in America, we have over 22 million workers who are making less than $15 an hour, and nearly 40 million people in our country earning less than $17 an hour. Shamefully, the federal minimum wage, despite the efforts of myself and other people here, have not been raised since 2009 and remains an unbelievable $7.25 an hour. Will you work with those of us who want to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage to take millions of Americans out of poverty?
Senator, I believe that the minimum wage is more of a statewide and regional issue.
Of course you do. And that's not just the Republicans. That's the feckless, coward Democrats as well that have never pushed hard enough to get legislation passed. Although I did a little bit of research, the only party that has ever voted against minimum wage legislation has been the Republicans, and it's only been introduced by Democrats. So, yeah, Republicans hate America. Here's another example. Let me just see if I can find this story, because this one is the one that's really scary. Oh, by the way, I just saw this before I get into the next story. There is push from Democrats on the Judiciary Committee for Merrick Garland to drop the charges against Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira. So those two, you may remember, were part of the classified documents, the treason that Donald Trump and his minions committed down at Mar-a-Lago, with withholding NDI information, obstructing justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reason so we got Jack Smith's report from the J6, treason. It's amazing to even be talking about that. The reason that this report from Mar-a-Lago could not be released or go public, I should say, is because those two people, Nauta and de Oliveira, are still facing charges, which would pollute the jury pool. It would make it sort of, I guess it would not allow them to have a fair trial. Whatever. Defendants have rights. I get it. I get it. I understand. I don't like it, but I get it. But there's now a push because if those charges were released or those charges were dropped, then there would be no more case, because what's going to happen as soon as Trump takes office, that case is going to end anyway. So the push from Democrats is for Joe Biden to, or for Merrick Garland to drop those charges. Or I thought about this last night. Since the Supreme Court granted the president immunity, I would say that Joe Biden could do this and just say we're doing it anyways because it's an interest of national security. So I don't know. I mean, I doubt it's going to happen because we never seem to be able to, effectively execute justice in our country. But I wouldn't be surprised if something like that. I'm not holding my breath for it, but that's something that could potentially happen, right? So charges get dropped, and then the report can go public because that was the only holdup. Or Joe Biden could just say, the Supreme Court said I had immunity, so fuck it. I'm going to burn it down. I'm going to release this so the world can see that Donald Trump is a treasonous traitor who happens to be the president again. So there's that. Okay, so I want to go back to this story that I this is kind of another example of how we talk about how many times we talk about how Republicans hate America. So the evidence is clear. All right. So you guys may recall that one of the considerations, or one of the major high points of the Inflation Reduction Act, included focus to reduce the cost our seniors millions, if not billions of dollars. Ever since that law was passed, Republicans have been going after it. So Republicans again moved to a repeal law that saves older Americans billions in healthcare costs. Scott Perry, who, by the way, also was involved in the election interference campaign, and he was part of the Telegraph, the Signal communication group back and forth with other traders. But Anyway, he's a member of Congress and soon to be a member of the cabinet. Anywho, Pennsylvania Republican Scott Perry is co-sponsoring a bill to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. 15 other House Republicans have filed a bill to completely repeal the entire Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. President Biden's health care and clean energy infrastructure law, repeal of the law would significantly increase costs for millions of American consumers. So not only pharmaceuticals, but it also helped build out the grid, created millions of jobs. We've seen inflation come down literally since the date it was signed. So again, evidence and facts are hard. In the 2022 law, passed by Democrats, authorized $369 billion in energy and climate change infrastructure, capped out-of-pocket prescription drug and insulin costs for millions of older Americans, and authorized the Medicare program to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies for lower prices on commonly used drugs, and provided funding to the Internal Revenue Service to modernize its operation and crack down on wealthy tax evaders, which, that last part, the IRS, they have recouped billions of dollars from tax cheats. And guess who those tax cheats were? Wasn't you and me. So that worked. January 1st, the Inflation Reduction Act went into effect that limits out-of-pocket prescription drug co-payments by Medicare Part D subscribers to just $2,000 annually. For nearly 19 million Americans, this will mean an average savings of $500 this year. Those with the highest prescription drug costs will save an average of $2,500. The first 10 medication price reductions negotiated under the law will go into effect in 2026, saving Medicare Part D recipients an estimated $1.5 billion in out-of-pocket costs annually, and saving the Medicare program about $6 billion per year, according to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Republicans in Congress and their big pharma donors, however, want the law repealed, with the Democrats holding the majority, was part of the reason it got passed. So why would anyone want to do that other than try to, fund more tax cuts? A signature piece of legislation. Think about the two sort of targets by the Trump administration. Wanted to repeal and replace the ACA, which, by the way, MAGA, it's also Obamacare. Same thing. Without a solution. They're still going after it. They're still going to figure out a way to repeal it because now they have the courts. They have majorities in both the House and the Senate. I'm on the ACA. My kids are on the ACA. So there's that. Now they want to go after, millions of Americans, 20 plus million Americans who are impacted by the cost savings provided under the infrastructure of the Inflation Reduction Act to the tune of $1.5 billion in savings. Now, why would anyone who says that they care about America want to do anything like that? It's just disturbing to me. You heard someone who's going to be the new Secretary of the Treasury talk about raising the minimum wage. Not interested. Don't want to do it. So we're just going to punish people. Because the entire thing has been about hate, cruelty. It's crazy. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. There's 600 people in here. We're struggling to get to 100K, guys. So you guys can help me out. So there's that, right? I don't even know what to say, to be honest, about things like that. I mean, this is a pet project of Trump because he doesn't want Biden's name in anything. So what they'll attempt to do is they'll try to pass something new. Just think about NAFTA. NAFTA didn't change. He just wanted his name on it. It was pretty much the same thing. North American Free Trade Agreement, Mexico, Canada, USMCA, U.S.-Mexico Canadian Agreement. It's really nothing changed. He talked about a big, bright, shiny new concept of a plan, concept of a healthcare plan. Nothing, not a damn thing. So now we're taking literally taking money out of the pockets of seniors. All right. Oh, there's more. I have more to tell you. It gets worse. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Oh, I just wanted you guys to know. All right. Listen, in case you were worried about Hollywood, Donald Trump has put Jon Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone in charge of monitoring Hollywood, making sure that Hollywood, what he refers to as troubled, is protected. So the story reads, Donald Trump vows to help troubled Hollywood with Mel Gibson, John Voight, and Sylvester Stallone. Hey, yo, Mel, the president put me in charge of Hollywood. Yo, Adrian, why are you so woke? Freedom! Anyway, Trump wants to make Hollywood bigger, better, and stronger, and has cast Mel Gibson, John Voight, and Sylvester Stallone as stars of what he is calling special ambassadors to a great but very troubled place, Hollywood. That's important. We have people that are losing their lives. We have women who are bleeding out. We have the trans community being eradicated. We have children dying in schools. We don't have health care. We have poverty. We have houseless vets. We have a crippling debt burden. We have our literally our world on fire. But let's make sure that these guys can keep us from troubled Hollywood. The president-elect announced on his social media site that the three actors would be his eyes and ears to the movie-making town. It will again be like the United States of America itself, the golden age of Hollywood, he wrote on Live Social. He also called the trio special envoys. Special ambassadors and envoys are typically chosen to respond to troubled hotspots like the Middle East, not California. Gibson said in a statement that he got the news at the same time as all of you and was just as surprised. Nevertheless, I heed the call. They'll never take my Hollywood. Aaron, go brah. My duty as a citizen is to give any help and insight I can. Gibson, who lost his home in the Palisades fire, added, any chance the position comes with an ambassador's residence? U.S. film and television production has been hampered in recent years with setbacks from COVID-19, the Hollywood Actors Guild strike of 2023, and in the past week, the ongoing wildfires in L.A. Overall production in the U.S. was down 26% from 2021, according to data. I mean, what can we say about it? Hollywood, troubled Hollywood is a priority. People are starving. Veterans are losing health care. Republicans going after SNAP benefits, Medicare subsidies. But Hollywood. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I've got more. This is reported out by NBC. Republicans are considering serving up Medicare as part of a buffet for billionaires. The House GOP is busy determining where to slash trillions of dollars from the social safety net to pay for the tax cuts for the wealthy. While the Senate is busy holding these hearings for President-elect Trump's nominees this week, the House Republicans are focusing on moving his legislative agenda forward. Their baseline goal will likely sound reasonable to the average listener. Cut government spending and use the money to help fund his policies. Sure. But even the slightest scrutiny shows just how much pain millions of Americans will have to tolerate to pay for the GOP's massive handout to the country's wealthiest few. Republicans scored their last major legislative victory under the first Trump administration in 2017, the Tax Cuts and Job Act, which, of course, we know that the overwhelming majority went to support the rich, which rewrote large sections of the tax code, skewed strongly towards the country's top earners, 87%, in fact, and corporations. And Republicans claim the tax cut would ultimately pay for themselves, proved unsurprisingly inaccurate, adding $2 trillion to the federal debt. Even the slightest scrutiny shows just how much pain millions of Americans will have to tolerate to pay for the GOP's massive handout to the country's wealthiest few. Many of those reduced tax rates from the act are due to expire at the end of this year. So any tax break that the rest of us got, which was very not minimal, will expire this year. We all know that. We've been talking about it forever. Making their renewal and potential expansion Republicans' top priorities. Keep in mind, tax legislation is 10 years, and it's designed that way so that only one presidential term, potentially 2 terms, can pass tax legislation. Because the trader lost in so he signed the TCJA in 2017. He lost in 2020. Now he won again, which means he gets to do it twice. So not only did he add $2 trillion of debt to the first time by handing out corporate tax cuts, he wants to do it again and deeper. And we know that the tax cuts were not paid for the first time, so we have to figure out a way to pay for it. How shall we screw the middle class and the poor? Oh, I know. Let's take their benefits. Wait.
Fuck the poor. Fuck the children. Let's give out handouts to the billionaires.
On top of that, the tax cuts that Trump promised on the campaign trail, if enacted in full, could cost up to $10 trillion, hoping to preserve the entirely undeserved reputation as champions of fiscal health. Congressional Republicans are now on the hunt for options to counter that giant price tag. The most obvious solution would be to raise revenues elsewhere. Now, how do you do that? Even President Biden advocated keeping some of the TCJ as tax cuts, but would have offset those by allowing the rates for the wealthy Americans to rise. Exactly. Keep the tax breaks for the middle class and the poor, raise tax rates on the rich. But no, can't do that. That is, of course, a non-starter for the Republicans whose main function in Congress is to protect the rich from any hardship. Trump has claimed that his plans to slap tariffs on most American imports would pay for his agenda. Those new fees could pour as much as $2.7 trillion into the Treasury over the next 10 years, according to an estimate from the Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal. Short of Trump's promised cuts, and companies would likely pass those costs on to consumers, making the tariffs a double-edged sword at worst. To close the gap, House Republicans are reportedly circulating a list of potential spending cuts that could be made to cover the cost of offering their top 1%, or cut the top 1% earners. Politico published a document last Friday that lists up to $5.7 trillion in top-line savings over the next decade. Rather than the framework of a bill, though, a House GOP source told Politico that the, quote, document is not intended to serve as a proposal, but instead as a menu of potential spending reductions to consider. The items on the list, which originated within the House Budget Committee, a Republican-led committee, are coded in the kind of double talk that conservatives have long relied on to make their draconian policies seem more palatable. A section titled "Making Medicaid Work for the Most Vulnerable" promises to cut $2.3 trillion in spending via per capita caps and equalizing Medicaid payments for able-bodied adults. Translated, though, that would mean that states would receive a maximum amount of Medicaid reimbursement based on their population, hurting bigger states and forcing them to choose who gets what money and reducing coverage for enrollees who aren't a poor child or disabled adult. There you go. That's Project 2025. That's kind of exactly what that is, right? Consolidation of government, right? But yet they want to consolidate government by making it bigger, saving money by cutting out waste to the poor, creating these bullshit laws with funky titles like this one, like HR 7. Remember this one? Again, the words, right, that are palatable for people because you get excited about the words. Recognizing this is HR 7, recognizing the importance of access to comprehensive, high-quality, life-affirming medical care for women of all ages. Sounds great, right? Psh, of course. Who wouldn't want that? Until you read a little deeper when it says, whereas health care for women should also address the needs of men, families, and communities as they relate to women's health care. The distraction, right? Proving once again that Republicans hate America. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. I appreciate you all for being here. I want to pivot for just a moment here. Speaker, yeah, I saw that. All right. Right. I saw that, Ed. Thank you. I'll get to that in just a moment. I've got that covered, actually. All right. So I don't know if you guys know the author Octavia Butler, but she's an incredible writer. And I was reminded of she has a couple of books in the Parable series, Parable of the Sorrow and Parable of the Talents. And it's gotten a lot of attention. These two books in particular have gotten a lot of attention over the last couple of weeks because she's being referred to as Nostradamus because of what she wrote in these books over 30 years ago and how accurate it is today. So the first one, there's two in the series. Again, Parable of Sorrow and Parable of the Talents. So, sorry. Wait, hold on a second. Where did I do that? Sower. I'm sorry. Parable of the Sower. First of all, in the parable of the sower, it talks about. All right, this is the plot line. So just listen to amazing how, yeah, parable of the sower. Beginning in 2024, this is the plot from this book. Octavia Butler is the author. Beginning in 2024, when society in the U.S. Beginning in 2024. Okay, this book was written in 1998, 1993. So, beginning in 2024, when society in the United States has grown unstable due to climate change, growing wealth inequality, and corporate greed, Parable of the Sower takes the form of a journal kept by Lauren Oya Olamina, an African-American teenager. Her mother abused drugs during a pregnancy and left Lauren with quote, hyper-empathy or sharing, the uncontrollable ability to feel the sensations she witnesses in others, particularly the abundant pain in her world. Lauren grows up in the remnants of a gated community in Robledo, California. It's a made-up area, LA basically, 20 miles from Los Angeles, where she and her neighbors struggle, but are separate from the abject poverty of the world outside. Outside of the community are numerous homeless, and mutilated individuals who resent the community members for their relative affluence. Public services such as police or firefighters are untrustworthy, exploiting their position for profit and making little effort to help. Lauren's father, a Baptist pastor and college professor, holds the community together through Baptist religion, mutual aid, and careful use of resources, such as making bread from acorns. However, Lauren is increasingly certain that despite all her efforts, society will continue to deteriorate and the community will no longer be safe. Lauren secretly prepares to travel north, as many do, in search of rare paid jobs. The newly elected radical authoritarian President Donner loosens labor protections, creating a rise in company towns, which Elon Musk has in Texas for SpaceX, by the way, and wants to do more. Creating a rise in company towns owned by foreign businesses, Lauren privately develops her own new belief system based on the belief that God is in charge, or God is change, is the only lasting truth, and that humanity should shape God in order to aid themselves. She comes to call this religion Earthseed. Okay, that's the first part. That's the parable of the sower. Predicting climate change, wildfires. She refers to wildfires. I mean, literally, that is like, it's scary. It's scary. But it gets even better or worse, because in the next book, which is Parable of the Talents, it goes a little bit deeper, okay? This novel is set against the backdrop of a dystopian United States that has come under the grip of a Christian fundamentalist denomination called Christian America, led by President Andrew Steele Jarrett. Buckle up, seeking to restore America power and prestige and using the slogan, "Make America Great Again," Jarrett embarks on a crusade to cleanse America of non-Christian faiths. Slavery has resurfaced with advanced shock collars being used to control slaves. Virtual reality headsets known as dream masks are also popular since they enable wearers to escape their harsh reality. During the course of the novel, Acorn is attacked and taken over by Christian American crusaders and turned into a re-education camp. For the next year and a half, Lauren from the first book, Lauren and other adults are enslaved and forced to wear shock collars. Their Christian American captors exploit them as forced labor under the pretext of reforming them. Lauren and several of the women are also regularly raped by their captors, who regard them as heathens and property. In 2035, Lauren and her followers eventually rebel and unalive their captors. To avoid retribution, they are forced to disperse into hiding. By 2036, still in power, again, after 20 years, by 2036, President Jarrett is defeated after a single term due to public dissatisfaction with the Alaska-Canada War and revelations of his role in witch burnings. Holy fuck. Octavia Butler. I highly recommend it. Once again, black women for the win. Predicting the future. Just a little bit. I don't, yeah, I know she passed away a few years ago. And there's a great quote that I also found from her as they're referencing this amazing woman and her stories. Let me see if I can find it. She says, This is a quote from her. Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought. To be led by a coward is to be controlled by all that the coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunist to control the fool. To be led by a thief is to offer up your most precious treasures to be stolen. To be led by a liar is to ask to be told lies. To be led by a tyrant is to sell yourself and those you love into slavery. Holy shit. I mean, I don't even know. I read that through that last night, and I shared it with some folks in our team, and I was gobsmacked. Like, just gobsmacked. Talk about insightful. Literally predicting what we are living right now. Predicting climate change impacting wildfires being impacted by climate change in LA, where she lived. Make America Great Again. Literally, it's referenced in Parable of the Talents. I know, goosebumps, right? Exactly. All right. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Just as a programming note, not sure exactly what we're going to do this morning, but we've got a lot to talk about today. So initially, we were planning on being joined by Julia Hubbard, who is a Schmeck's trafficking. She was trafficked by a billionaire, and her story is amazing. And we may or may not have her join. She may or may not be joining us at 9. If not tonight, if not today, then we'll do Facts After Dark tonight, and we'll focus on her and her story. We'll also talk about becoming antisocial. So it'll be a uplifting evening, but a necessary conversation because we've been committed. We have been committed on this channel for raising up the voices of those whose voices need to be heard. And if we're going down swinging. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And then tomorrow, depending on how things go today with SCOTUS, we might do like a friendly sort of everybody just rally around and just laugh and shit and just have a good old time. I know RJ's going to do something in the morning. I'll be joining him there. And then I'll be doing something later in the evening on Saturday so that we can all celebrate together because we don't know what's going to happen. I think that we need to remind ourselves that there's a couple of things, right? So this is my prediction. I talked about that. Facts After Dark is tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern time right here. Thank you for that. There's language in the law that gives the president a one-time 90-day extension, but it's very clear that it has to be related to a sale. So there's 3 primary directives that the only way that the president can initiate this 90-day extension is the sale either has to be pending, the divestiture plan needs to be real, there needs to be either contract terms or something like that. So it's got to be really specific, right? So there's that. So whether or not the Biden administration can do that based on the status that ByteDance has said, because ByteDance has said that they're not going to sell. So that's one side of it. Yesterday, there was reporting that the Biden administration said that they're not going to be pursuing legal action, meaning that as of 12:01 on the 19th, TikTok will not go dark, as far as we know. I mean, ultimately, it's ByteDance's decision. When did he extend it? Did he just come out and say that? Did he extend it for 36 hours? Is that breaking news? I don't see that. The 36 hours is basically saying, okay, I got you, Dolphin. Basically, that's where I was going with this. So what the Biden administration says, they're not going to enforce the ban, meaning that because the $5,000 per user penalty for ISPs who still carry TikTok, meaning that all the 170 million users, how many ever ISPs there are, each of them would pay $5,000 per user as a fine, right? So what his Justice Department is going to do is that we're not going to enforce that, meaning that no penalties, according to what they've said, but they can only do that through noon on Monday, right? We don't know if the Trump administration would do the same thing. They've been very cagey about that. So it comes down to the Supreme Court. Ultimately, I know that there was legislation that was introduced in the Senate by Ed Markey. I know Ro Khanna has asking people to sign a petition. By the way, that petition is in the link tree in my bio. 202-224-3121 is the congressional switchboard. You can contact your senators and your members of Congress and tell them, hey, what the fuck? We don't want to lose our app. Because again, people are now, because Red Note is now the #1 most popular app in the App Store. Um, it's a Chinese app. It's literally exactly what they told us they didn't want us to have, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think at 10 o'clock today, we'll get a decision. Um, we all are under the expectation that there are walls between our various branches of government. We know that there's oversight involved, but if there's enough pressure, potentially, I think that the Supreme Court doesn't generally like going against an overwhelming. Let me be careful how I say this. If there's enough public sentiment, right, and enough pushback based on how this law was signed, because again, it was part of a massive humanitarian aid package. And this bill, the TikTok ban, was kind of wrapped into that, which means we had to make a sacrifice. I don't agree, but that's how it worked. So then the question would be, if there's some time, if 90 days or 270 days or whatever could potentially be added, would that give Congress the ability to look at this law again and say, okay, we're going to do this separately, and no, we don't want to ban it? I don't fucking know, but we'll see. All right, everybody keep tapping and sharing. Eagle, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So there is some truth to that. I heard that very early on in this whole scheme of things, and you're the first person to actually take that topic, and I'm gravitated towards that. So what is that looking like? Is there a legitimate stoppage of the bill or the execution of the bill into being law because it was not given air to breathe, so to speak, or wasn't allowed a chance for the public to scrutinize it a little further? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not, well, the public doesn't, the way our system works, the public doesn't necessarily get a chance to.
No, I mean through our representation. That's the public. That's
Right,
what I meant when I said
exactly. Yeah.
My
So yeah,
bad.
that's where I was going with that. So the issue is this, is that when you have so many people support it, like for example, I think it was 80 members of the Senate that voted in support of this. In this divided government, I forget what the House numbers were, but it was also big. It was an overwhelming majority. So that says to the executive branch that this is legislation that the majority of our country and our representative democracy supports. So we can criticize Joe Biden for signing it, and I think there's some legitimacy there. But if he didn't sign it, then humanitarian aid to Gaza, to Ukraine would not have gone through as well. So that's the problem when you have these bills that are piggybacked together, that have no relationship whatsoever.
That's how come we're divided right there.
That's part of the
No, no,
that's
no.
one of the many reasons.
I
But
think that's
so I
it.
guess the question is, if there's 90 days or 270 days or however long of a pause that we can get, maybe Supreme Court says we want to pause this, whatever that might be, does that give Congress a chance to look at this differently and say, look, we need to do this separately. We need to, because we know that the American public has now gravitated to an actual Chinese app that is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, right? Because Red Note is the Chinese version of TikTok.
I have a red note actually. I'm
Yeah,
on it.
I mean, I
I
have an
gave it
account
a
as
stress
well.
test this morning. It's
Yeah,
nice.
I'm going to test it out. I mean, its functionality is similar. It's not the same. So that's kind of where we're at. So again, I'm not gonna. It's difficult to fault. It's difficult to fault the president for signing an aid package. Sadly, if he had not done that, then aid would not have gone to the people who needed it. Right?
That's a
Those
disgusting
those two
negotiation.
bills should not have been put together.
Right. That's a nasty. That's a scum way of existing right there.
Yeah,
Seriously, for a
yeah,
person to stoop so low to push, such a radical ideology, to just disregard, there's a pattern of this blatant disregard for that in which is sacred
correct,
from that side.
correct.
I mean, and if the public doesn't see that, then something's wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
Something is wrong. It
well,
really
I
is.
think
And if the congressmen and the congress ladies that are up there that are anti any of that, and even some of the sympathizers that are anti some of the more radical stuff that he's doing, y'all hold him accountable. Listen, man, sacrifice yourself for the country, man. Seriously, sacrifice yourself for the country, man. We got you. Don't worry about MAGA. If you afraid of somebody doing something to you, the public, we got you. It's more of us than it is them. Seriously.
No,
The outcry is massive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
don't worry
I don't disagree.
don't worry about none of that. If that's what you're afraid of, don't worry about that. We will round them up and put all of them in Texas. Seriously. We'll fit all of them down there with them buildings that they're trying to build for the migrants that are coming across, that they fabricating all that stuff about around them. We're going to get them out of there, and we're going to corral all these lunatics up and these idiots and these wild people, and we're going to take them down there and give them all the treatment that Donald Trump was talking about. Ain't that what he was talking about? We're going to provide them with a place where they can get treatment and all of that stuff. We're going to round y'all up and put y'all down there. So if you congressional members are afraid of them doing something to you physically, don't worry about that. Sacrifice yourself. Stand up. Stand up to this man, because this man right here got an agenda. And if there's any one of y'all Republicans or any of your aides or any of you listening to this right here, you need to stand up. If you're not standing up, you're riding with him. It's simple. There is no middle ground on this. It's either you with what you are or you not. There is no middle ground with him. He does not play fair. He has not played fair. And I'm not saying the game has ever been fair, because it ain't. But this guy right here, he is following the same path that Adolf took, step by step.
It's true.
And I don't want to believe that, but I'm seeing it. So if you guys think that, I think Valkyrie kind of summed a lot of that up, right? But I'm just saying, if y'all think that scenario is going to take place with them putting their hands on y'all congressional members, I'm telling you, no. Y'all stand up and sacrifice. Give us the information that we need, the inside information that we need, so we can bring it to the public. Let it leak out. Let all of this stuff leak out. Don't let him consolidate all of that power around transparency and control. You can't do that.
Preach.
You cannot allow this man to sit up in this office and say that he wants to consolidate tariffs, basically so he can fund his own agencies that you would allow him to consolidate. You can't do that.
And so
You have to, something has to leak out.
Preach.
Start letting it leak out. If you don't want to get involved like that, let it leak. Vote against him. Don't let none of that lunacy through. If there's something that he puts in there that benefits us all, give it to him. But that lunacy that he's talking about, trying to consolidate, anything that's got to do with him trying to consolidate control in any shape, form, or fashion, do not let him have that.
Preach.
Seriously. Because if you do, it's going to be a problem over here. And I hate to say that, but it is.
Well, we see it every single day.
And it's
why
only,
I believe.
just stop. Don't let that clown. Let's get rid of the clown, man. Like I said, if he's talking about something that's beneficial, fine. But if he not, no, we're not doing it. I noticed a couple of Republicans that was doing some of that forging, if you would, looking down their glasses at a couple of them.
Yeah.
That I'm talking about the Republicans that were praising them.
I know.
Was kind of looking down their glasses like, listen here, boy. Now, I understand that you're a Republican and you ride with Donald, and that's all fine and dandy. This is all I get out of a look. Like, hey, but do you really understand what we're talking about here, boy? Those were the kind of looks that I was seeing from the Republicans that were embracing them. So I just don't think, I don't want to believe all of the hype that's out here, that there are no congressional members that are up there, some heavyweights that can shake something, that's riding with this clown. If that's the case, you made enough money, man. How much more money do you need? Seriously.
They always need more.
How much more money do you need, man?
Yeah. It's never about needing. They just want
Come
more.
on now. Are you really willing to drive us into the ground like that? But even more so, do you think we just gonna sit back and allow you to do it now that we done put you on notice about it? Because that's the process, is the notice, right? The public, I'm making a public announcement. What is it, a PSA?
Damn straight.
Yeah, that's what I'm making. The Public has put you all on notice. So y'all got to take care of that business up there, man. Don't let this man run this world like that. We can't deal with that. We don't need that. That is bad on us, man. The world is looking at us like, really? You really let Donald Trump in office, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all really did let this man in there. And then all of the stuff that we hearing is coming from him. We don't want you Americans around us with that kind of rhetoric, because I found out today on that app, the world is really relatively peaceful in certain pockets of it. Relatively peaceful. In China, so far, it's peaceful.
Civil rights violations aside, but sure, they
Peaceful.
the peace is peace because they suppress it.
It's suppressed peace.
They don't let they suppress
That's just
violence.
as bad. That's
they
just as
suppress
bad.
violence. Yeah.
That's if not worse.
I wouldn't call it peaceful,
Ooh,
but they
yeah,
suppress
bad
violence.
bad analogy there.
Yeah, no, I got
But
you.
yeah,
I know what you meant.
man, this whole
Well, that's
if we
part
look,
of that's part of the draw for authoritarians, though, right? So that's why think about things Trump has said about authoritarians in the past. Like when he came back from Korea, he's like, I love it that his people stand up and salute him. So he gets a Woody, a little one at that, over things like that. He praises Viktor Orban. He praises autocrats and dictators because he wants his people to be in line, lockstep, jackboots, hands in the air. That's what he wants. That's what we see. That's what his voters want. They want to be led because
Yeah.
they are cowardice
Yeah.
fucking sheep traitors.
yeah,
That's what they want.
they're losers.
And that's why we're here.
Listen, to anyone that's listening to this, us American people. Now, listen, okay, MAGA done gave you guys the wrong impression of who we are, because that is not what America represents. We don't represent that stuff that MAGA's talking about, and that garbage that Donald Trump's talking about with a constitutional monarchy. We are not interested in that at all.
No, I know.
I mean, that's how the other part of America looks. That representation that he done gave us, he done peeled off what dignity we did have off and put MAGA up there, with Trump on the top of it.
Exactly.
Just like a business. Went in there, yeah. But that is not what we are. We spray paint graffiti on it right now as we speak. That's how come everybody's screaming, is because they're mad because people like me are coming out putting graffiti on that. I'm bad for advertisement.
Eagle, brother, I appreciate you. I always love to hear, it's funny.
Yeah,
You checked
man.
in on me the other day, make sure I was okay. I'm about to ask,
yeah.
are you doing okay, brother?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I'm still chewing on a bunch of stuff, man. This ERS has really got me kind of concerned.
Sure.
Boy, just think about that for one moment, because I mean the powers of that, right? Of the reorganization of that, U.S. Customs and Borders, they already collect tariffs and duties.
Oh, I know.
You know what I'm saying? So
We don't need the external revenue service. We
yeah,
don't
it
need
doesn't. And see, that's why I said that's how come
Making
I said
government smaller, right, Eagle? Making government smaller by adding agencies. That really
right
works.
But
Yeah.
but the deal is he wants to get rid of all of them and consolidate them under one umbrella,
That's
so
Project
he can control
2025.
those, right?
Correct.
So now, if he consolidated everything under his umbrella and Congress gave him the power to do so, that would mean he could activate something under executive order. And he wouldn't have to worry about the funding because he would be getting it directly from the tariffs that he would be putting down. You feel me?
Correct.
Because it's coming through so he could personally fund his own army. He wouldn't need the consent of Congress. He wouldn't care about the Constitution. I don't care about the Constitution. What do I need the Constitution for?
At that point, you won't.
What do you need it for? You can fund what you want to do. So I'm just saying that's just my thought process about it. I ain't really
I appreciate
thought
it, buddy.
about thanks for the time. Y'all been great, man.
As always, man. We love you,
Yeah.
Eagle. You have a good day,
Likewise,
brother.
man.
See
You
you
too.
later. All right, bye. He's right. This again, the lie. Well, you know that. Anyway, I want to remind folks that because it's really, really important that we spend taxpayer dollars on checking in on Hollywood. I want to remind you of what Trump said about his new appointees.
It is my honor to announce John Boy, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone to be special ambassadors to a great but very troubled place, Hollywood, California. They will serve as special envoys to me for the purpose of bringing Hollywood, which has lost much business over the last 4 years, to foreign countries, back, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. These three very talented people will be my eyes and my ears, and I will get done what they suggest. It will again be like the United States of America itself, the golden age of Hollywood. Make America great again, MAGA 2024 or 5 or whatever. Yo, Adrian!
Adding the External Revenue Service, which is exactly what Eagle pointed out. We already have Customs and Border Patrol. They're the ones that collect taxes, tariffs. We don't need an ERS. It's more bullshit. We don't need to be going to try to acquire Greenland. We don't need to be declaring war on Europe. We don't need to be trying to annex Canada. We don't need to be, threatening the Panama Canal. They don't even have a military, right? But instead, we're going to gut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits. We're going to pass legislation to ban trans athletes from sports. We're going to pass legislation that will force women to get permission from the men in their lives to what? Be treated for a sprained ankle? Fucking pitiful. All right. I think I see AD in the request box. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning. It is a morning.
Did you come back for more thirst?
Well, I mean,
Thirsty Thursday yesterday. First of all, for those
turns
of you
that way.
For those of you who were here yesterday, thank you for allowing us to have that fun, because I am apparently in the crosshairs of Professor Ben Dowdero, but I can take it. So welcome. What's on
I
your
think
mind
that will be some delicious revenge. In fact, I'm ready
Probably.
for it to be served cold. Yeah.
today? Best served cold.
No, I just, Eagle, clap, 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 snap, 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 right? That article that I posted that I know you said you were going to cover it. So I thought that was that's a pretty good example of things are already happening where he's clearly not okay with someone in his own party who has spoken out against Ukraine and voted to certify the election, et cetera, et cetera. And now we've I guess back up. You want to tell the people what this what I'm talking about? The House Intelligence Committee chair was fired by taint liquor Mike Johnson.
Right, remove from his seat. So Mike Turner has been a very vocal critic of his own party when it comes to funding for Ukraine. He's the one that has talked about how Russian propaganda has infiltrated the House GOP. He's gone on the record. He's gone on woke liberal news stations and talked about this. He has been he voted to certify the election, all these kinds of things. So he was in charge of the House Intelligence Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees there is in Congress. And Mike Johnson basically removed him from that post.
And the people probably don't know this, because I know I wasn't aware of how deep this really goes as it relates to just how important this committee is, because those folks get classified information that nobody knows about, right? Their purpose is to make sure we're protecting our interests and security of our nation. Right. And so Turner not only has a lot of information about exactly what happened, a lot of these things that Trump will never be held accountable to, a lot of the things that he's now immune for, Turner has access to, he knows about, and not only does he know about, but he would have known about moving forward, right? Like he have access to all that, and you would hold him accountable, likely. But so we don't want to have that. We need to get him out of there and replace him with someone who will also lick my tape. Yeah.
Good morning, Rich. How are you today? Rich, are you there? Rich B? I guess not. Okay. I have somebody else requesting too.
It would be interesting to see, to hear some of these MAGA in our basement chat there.
They won't, though.
Trying to defend that. Like, I would think, though, you would want to hold that person, your guy, accountable to doing good things for the country you say you want to make great again, right? To not have threats against it.
So apparently, Mark Cuban is now ready to fund a TikTok alternative built on Blue Sky.
Yes, that was the other thing I wanted to talk to you about that I just saw.
It's
Mhm.
again, I would want everybody to be careful. I'm not going to advocate for people getting red no. I'm not going to advocate. Everybody's personal choice. I see a lot of opinions, I'm asking our team to not advocate one way or another. I think if people want to make that decision, then you can do it, but that's up to you. My concern is there's going to be a lot of things like this. You know, if Mark Cuban is going to throw some dollars at this thing, then that would be to me, that would be considered worthwhile because of all the billionaires out there. At least Mark Cuban is somewhat putting his money where his mouth is. You know, he offers pharmaceutical at cost. He's created an entire business model.
Yeah,
So
Mark Cuban is one of the good ones, I think, if there are.
Yeah, one of the less shitty ones.
Less shittier. There we go.
Yeah. So if he's funding things like this, then that might be something to consider. I don't know, but I want to go back to some of the language regarding this ban because I did a video about this yesterday. So, again, we're expecting the SCOTUS ruling on this at 10 o'clock is when they usually release their opinions, and they have to release something today. They have to, just because we need to know. If they decide that the TikTok ban is unconstitutional, then we're good. If they decide to uphold the ban, there's a couple of things that can happen. We talked about this earlier. There is language in the law. First of all, the way the law works, TikTok is not required to go dark on the 19th. It's the app stores and internet hosting services that could be on the hook if they keep providing their services to TikTok. The law gives the Justice Department the power to pursue fines of up to $5,000 per user. That's an enormous potential liability. The Biden administration has come out and said that they're not going to enforce that. It's only 36 hours though, from until the ban goes into effect midnight Eastern time on the 19th, and then he leaves office at noon Eastern.
Noon on Monday.
So that'd be 36 hours potentially that they're not going to enforce these fines. The president, even if President Biden or President-elect Trump say they won't enforce the ban, companies will still be liable as long as TikTok is owned by ByteDance. Apple, Google, and Oracle have so far not responded to or declined to comment to the news outlets about what they will do come Sunday. The reality is that both presidents have limited options to pursue the ban. Let's see. This is the hard part. See if I can find it. Because it has to do with the divestiture, and there's a couple of things that can happen only if it's very. Here we go. The law states the president can grant a one-time extension delaying the ban for up to 90 days. But there are three very specific conditions. TikTok must show it's on a path to executing a divestiture from its Chinese owner. There must be evidence of significant progress toward a sale, and that progress must be sealed with, quote, relevant binding legal agreements. And at this point, there is no sign that any of those conditions have been met. So I don't know.
I mean, we'll find a way. I've decided to stop worrying about it until things happen, and then we'll figure out what we need to do from there.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it either because there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that, again, Biden signed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Advisory Controlled Applications Act, which again was part of a massive $95 billion foreign aid package passed by Congress in April of last year. So that's why we're here. Anyway, but
One thing I know about our generation, you can't put us in a corner. We'll figure out a way.
don't put baby in the corner.
Don't put baby in the corner.
Don't do that. Would you mind doing mod announcements real quick?
I would love to do mod announcements. Hello, fine people. There is almost 1,000 of you in here. We would be so grateful if you'd help us get this pushed to the FYP so we can have these important conversations while we still have this platform. We're at about 157K, so please use those fingers, tippity tap tap, share with some of your friends, have them come chat with us. We love to hear opinions that have different takes. Sometimes we get different takes up here, so share it to some folks that you think may not be interested, but just might stumble upon some interesting conversation. We also have a Discord, so you can come and join us there. That link is in Steve's bio. There's also the little heart that pushes us to the FYP right by FactsStillMatter. up at the upper left corner there. Hit that cost a coin. If you've got coins and you want to, clear out your account before you potentially can't use it anymore, we appreciate gifts. And also that goes for all the creators that you appreciate on this app. If we are going away, let's make sure we get that appreciation sent to the folks that you've listened to and gained interesting or helpful or profound knowledge from. So thank you for being here. We know you have choices. We appreciate that you come and join us.
Well, thank you for being here, AD. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, my friend. Wouldn't be anywhere else.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
You bet.
Okay, I want to switch gears because I did see a request, and I wasn't sure if this was going to happen today, but I want to bring up our friend Julia Hubbard. As we talked earlier, and I introduced this to you guys, we have always tried to make a commitment to this on our platform about the voices of victims. And we've tried to provide a safe space for people to tell their stories. And Julia and I just got to know each other recently. So I want to welcome Julia Hubbard to our conversation today. Hello, friend.
Hello, good morning, Facts. I took my morning vitamins, got my Coke, I'm ready.
I sent you numerous messages because I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure I gave you enough space.
No, you're wonderful.
Because we're watching, obviously, the news this morning. But I wanted you, I was going to try to tell your story a little bit because, I've spoke many, many times. First of all, I really want to say this again. I really appreciate that you trust me enough to be here and telling your story.
Of course, Steve.
that
You
means a
are
lot.
wonderful and one of the kindest people I've ever met, actually.
Thank you for saying that. So I want to, first of all, thank you again for being here. Why don't you tell us your story? Tell us part of the reason why we obviously need to continue to remind folks about victims' voices being heard, and let's see where the conversation goes, if you don't mind. So again,
Sure. So I am, if you haven't seen my content, I'm Julia. I was the one who was trafficked to the billionaire. I talk about it online now. We're 2 years into the case, and I've been kind of my own detective. The law enforcement failed us in every way. And so what happened was, I escaped my, what I thought was a domestic V situation, a DV situation back in 2000. You guys are so sweet. Back in 2015 or 17, excuse me, when my ex-husband held a weapon to my noggin and threatened to unalive me. And that was the moment in which I realized that it was either now or never, right? That's 6 pounds of pressure or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. I think it might be 9 pounds of pressure. In any case, I didn't have any idea what I was escaping at the time. All I knew is that he was abusive, right? And he was psychologically, mentally, spiritually, physically, but I couldn't put words in it. I didn't have the language. I didn't understand. It was so profound that, and all encompassing that I just thought he was special. Does that make sense? I really thought that he was special, I was special, that we had this worst chemistry in the history of all time. You know what I mean? I really blamed myself. I genuinely did. And then I moved out. I actually hit what I thought were 2 more violent situations. And then I moved to DC, and I had went into my father's basement and gotten off all the chemicals that all of these people had put me on, because I didn't realize that they had put me on all these chemicals. And I started a new life. It was in 2000. I'll never forget this day. September 29th, 2019, his other victim called me. Her name is Kayla, and I had been out to visit them. For the first time, he allowed me to see my child in 3 years after escaping him. I made friends with her, who I realized she was definitely in a bad situation, right? And what happened was she called me after I left that situation, and I confided in her that I saw that she was in a bad situation, and if she ever needed some help to call me. Well, she did on that September. And she said, he's essaying me. He's hurting me, and he's selling me to pay rent. And I will never forget those words, because finally, for the first time, I heard something that I could report right? That didn't have any of my shame attached to it, which is very important. Didn't have my shame attached to it. And so I could objectively view the situation as another person. And for the first time, I heard in her abuse story my own. And so through the chaos, we were asked to call. I called every type of law enforcement that you're supposed to. It was at that point that I found out that I have the justice-centered hyper focus on justice to autism. So I called all of them, too many, all of them. And then I started learning about HT, human trafficking, and I could not. What I learned is this, and this is the stat that I want to share with you guys, okay? Because this will explain why I did everything else. The United Nations estimates that 27.6 million people globally are held in a human trafficking or a labor trafficking situation or debt bondage, etc., worldwide. Yet in the United States, we caught 15,000 cases in 1 year. And globally, we caught 115,000 cases. So we are missing 99.9% of cases. And the reason that we're missing it is because everybody thinks it happens like Diddy. Everybody thinks that it's a smash and grab, that somebody kidnaps you from a gas station. That while that happens, those are your 1% of cases that people identify. Right. What really happens is when an intimate partner, when you start a relationship under force, fraud, threat, or coercion, that's any lie, that's a manipulation of your medication, that's using chemicals, that's leveraging your access to your children, that's any of those things. You enter any relationship and under those pretenses. And then you are either harbored, enticed, solicited, recruited, transported, or there's a bunch of other language. It depends on which state you're in, but those cover the general, to commit any act intended to cause arousal. That is how the language is, in exchange for anything of value. So what happened to me is my husband, who was my trafficker, used me for access to events. What he would do is he would say, he would hobnob with all kinds of people. And then they would throw these wild, kind of like Diddy, sort of, you know what I mean, parties. Yeah. But he would bring me as his entrance. And I know that sounds weird. I don't consider myself a hot person. I specifically try not to be anymore. But at the time that worked. And then it started with pictures, anything intended to cause arousal. It started with pictures, and then they would let him come to things. And then, do you see what I'm saying? It started out like that, and then there was money. But I didn't even know that the money was exchanging hands. I had no idea. So that's the point, is that no one, literally no one, recognizes their situation as trafficking while it's happening to them.
You and I talked about this, and again, thank you for being here. This is Julia Hubbard, and her story is amazing. We'll get into that. We'll get into the Netflix thing in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
We can't talk about that, Steve.
Yeah.
No, we can't say that.
Okay. Never mind. Forget I said that.
Not that.
We can talk about, so one of the things that I learned specifically about from our conversations was what and you sort of, I asked you about this because I wasn't sure, because you mentioned coercion. So I talked about these scenarios where women are in horrible positions and they're being coerced into sex or whatever it might be. And then you said that's trafficking. And I never looked at it that way, because I think we all have this definition of trafficking in our brains. That is mules, cartels, Matt Gaetz, people like that, which are all part of trafficking, but it goes deeper. So can you unpack that a little bit? And the reason I want you to share that is because there may be people in our audience that are listening today that may be in that position.
And I have to tell you, hundreds of people have come out on my content. So if what I'm saying resonates with you, I truly mean this. Even if you don't like anything, go to my page and look. Because if on my page, any of my content resonates with you about your situation, I teach about it, please call Polaris. And that number is all over my page. I'm happy to give it to you. It's in my link tree. It's everywhere. Gotcha. But so coercion. So this is crazy. This is crazy. I'm so glad you brought this up. The coercion is nuts. I didn't know that him leveraging my medications was both force, fraud, threat, and coercion. Because using chemicals in order to elicit someone to do something for you is both force, it's a lie because it's intended for the purposes of a commercial S act, right? So like you don't know that it's for a commercial S act. You just are completely uninhibited now. So coercion can be anything that's leveraging your medication. That, like, for example, my trafficker, my ex-husband, so we'll say my husband trafficker, would constantly leverage like me having access to my children. Like he would say, I will let you have dinner with us, I will let you hang out with your kids, I will let you do things like this. And he would stop me from having a relationship with them and doing things with them if I didn't do what he wanted. So it like he would leverage literally anything that I considered valuable against me in order to get me to do either the unpaid labor that he was forcing me to do for his business, and then keeping me as a hostage, basically. And then he would also force me into these sexual situations. Like he would have me sit in his boss's lap, and his boss would pay our power bill because he would smell my hair and kiss my cheek, and it was the grossest thing. That's trafficking. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So like, just, it doesn't matter if the victim knows the purpose of the act itself, right? It doesn't matter how you got into that act, because if you were force, fraud, threat, or coercion, harbor, entice, illicit, transport, I can break all those down too. My point is, that's a ride around the corner to your house. That doesn't have to be across borders. It doesn't have to be across county lines. It only has to be you gave someone a ride knowing they were going to commit this act. That's it. That's it. If you watch somebody's kids knowing, I'm sorry, we lagged. If you watch somebody's kids knowing that they were going to be trafficked, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's, you're participating.
When you we talked briefly about the Bernard Pellico situation in France.
Yes.
And it became this, as they unpacked it a lot more, for those of you who don't remember the story, examples, and then eventually an indictment and charges that he used illicits to rug his partner, and then exposed her to assault, invited people in, and then it became even deeper than that. I'm trying to be PG here as best I can, but then they uncovered a grape chat rooms with about 70,000 members, explaining how they did this to their partners, inviting others to share their stories, videotaping it. So those would all be examples of what we're talking about here. But
Yeah.
people, I think this is part of the education for all of us, Julie, for all of us listening, about how deep this goes. I think the statistic that you gave is so alarming that 99% we don't know the details.
Yeah.
It's only 1%.
And
So
that's, yeah. No, keep going. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when you heard that story, obviously you've been in part of that, indirectly or directly.
Yeah.
You must have been like, yeah, no shit.
Yet it was shocking. It was so shocking. And so that's why I went and studied it. And so what happened is like, I studied with some of the best people. I love Martina Vandenberg. Huge shout out to her, the president of the Human Trafficking Legal Center. She's a giant friend and mentor of mine. I really wanted to understand this law. I wanted to understand section 227102 part A and B is the TVPA specifically, but that language, understanding and breaking down what that actually means, what is force, fraud, threat, and coercion. And when you open your brain and think, okay, in a DV situation, did you enter your relationship under force, fraud, threat, or coercion? Okay. The Human Trafficking Legal Center states, and they just put this new information out recently, that I hope I don't totally screw this up the way they put it, because it was beautiful, that in some cases, the trafficker may start the relationship with you as an intended sexual transactional one from the start. And that is actually trafficking. So if they kept you hostage and you are not allowed to get to your own things in exchange for acts, That's trafficking. That's not DV. In fact, do you remember when I called you the other day and I said that guy that was yelling at his wife in
Yeah.
Dallas, the
Yeah.
pregnant wife, he was yelling at his wife saying,
Yeah.
"You can't go, you can't use the car because you haven't done your wifely duties." That's trafficking. You can't hold someone hostage in exchange for S acts. You can't do that. So that was kind of the message, is like, that's my point. So I see the 99% everywhere I go, and I felt like I was losing my mind. And now, since TikTok has found all these people are starting to get it. And I'm just so grateful and thankful, because I was like, just felt alone on an island. You know what I mean?
Do you know? It's difficult to not discuss politics when it comes to this,
Right.
and I'll be careful how I do this. But when you see when you see people who have risen to power, who've done things to other women that people have done to you, when you see legislation that are forcing women to get permission from the men in their life to seek medical care,
Right.
when you see, the conversation around no fault divorce, when you see the conversations around just literally taking away the rights for women, members of the LGBTQIA community,
Right.
these things must really resonate much differently to you, and obviously affects all of us who care about those things. But
Totally.
it's personal,
Yeah,
extremely personal for
it
you.
is. It is. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because, like, for instance, my schmafficker tied my tubes. He was in control of when I reproduced. It was up to him. I was property. So one of the ways he took control of me was by making me property, by telling me that he could control only when I could reproduce. And so that is a slap in the face to me. I frankly think Matt Gaetz got some karma back in his face. But I think the rest of them, it bothers me horribly. What I see is it's a regression of the women's movement in general. It's a regression of the suffrage movement. It's a regression of everything, because what they're doing is they're saying, no, we like you better in the kitchen. We like you better making babies. And what I'm saying is that's schmafficking. And what you're trying to get us to do is actually be slaves again. And I'm not interested in that, and nor any of the other women that I know. None of us want that. I have big plans. I can do more than be a mother, and I'm very tired of being told that that's all we can do.
One of the things that's impressed me the most, I mean, we've spoken on the phone a few times, and they've been like, my head has just exploded after having these conversations with you, because I'm neurospicy, and I know that you are as well, and we've had really good conversations. Just how amazing it is that facing the pressure that you've faced for the community in which you were trafficked in. I'm trying to be subtle here.
Sure.
And your willingness to stand up to it publicly says a lot. What was the final straw for you?
I saw Discovery. I'm going to be honest with you. We've been in this case for 2 years. I saw it. I can't tell you what's in it. The judge has said I can't, but I sure can be. I can go to TikTok, and I'm very confident. I'm pissed. And I also want to give the 99.9% a clue. Hey, you're not alone. I see you. There is no shame in what happened to me. I refuse to be shamed about it. I used chemicals with them. Yep. Do you know what I mean? Like, all of that happened. I genuinely am tired of this narrative that is put on women in particular, that how dare you be a sexual being in any way, and then be schmafficked. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to put an end to the stereotype that, number one, that women can't be all of those things at the same time, because we can be all of those things at the same time. But I just wanted to give other people the okay to go, wait a minute, that happened to me, and she doesn't feel bad about it, because I don't. I had no idea it was happening. I don't bear any shame for what happened to me. So, like, it's okay to just radically accept it and go, that's what their real enemy is our radical acceptance of what they've done to us. Because our silence is what they're betting on. And I just felt like I refused. I just refused. I'm not going to go quietly into that dark night. I'm going to go loud, because there's so many like me. I frankly think that there are hundreds more, just maybe even by my ex-husband alone. Like hundreds might be a lot, but lots. Do you know what I mean? I think there are more. And I don't think anybody's given them permission to say what happened to them. And I haven't seen it. And frankly, this time after watching Giselle Pellicote, I hope I'm saying that right.
I think that's right.
I frankly am like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do it that way. Fuck those guys. You know what I mean? They definitely did this. I feel like the world is going to know that very soon. And I'm just really tired of being quiet about it. I'm not quiet. And it made me really angry. Learning everything that I learned, it felt like a sacred responsibility to get this information to all the right people so that this can be not a movement just for myself, but for everyone.
We've had this conversation many times in this space, Julia, as to why, why the bear wins over and over and over and over and over again. And
Right.
we've had conversation recently about how it's all men until it's no men, and obviously that triggers people in the way we would expect it to.
Right.
From my perspective, I don't know why any woman would trust any man, quite frankly. So when you hear those conversations, this may be too personal. If it is, please let me know. Your ability to trust again,
Yeah.
and how difficult that must have been for you on your journey, or will you ever?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a totally fair question. It's not too personal at all. I have been very isolated on purpose. I felt like my healing journey was my responsibility. I didn't want to put that on anyone else, on a relationship, certainly, but anyone else. And so for me, I was very selective about who I let in. And I do trust, like I called you, you know what I mean? I do trust. I've made friends here. I've made I've really handpicked the people that I want to be around me for this. And I'm really proud of that. I don't have any stragglers from a past life. I don't have any, you know what I mean? I don't have any of that. I do trust people. It's probably part of my autism that I trust people, but at the same time, I've been a lot more careful about who I've selected to be around me. And I'm weird and different. I'm constantly told that, but I do think I will. I do. I really think that I found some of the worst humans on planet Earth, but those aren't the only humans on planet Earth, And so I think, I don't know. I certainly can't speak for all survivors. I know that like my sister survivor, Kayla, who lives with me, that she's escaped the same people. We're best friends now. The article about that is in my bio also. But she took her a long time too. We're both just, I warded alone for a little bit,
Sure.
and it felt like that was the right thing to do. I was hard to be around too for a little while because I was obsessed with this. I was the only person working on this case because when police won't help you, you have to become your own detective. So I became a licensed private investigator. I did all these things to like literally do this the right way and have evidence that was real, right? That was in the way that was disseminated in the way they needed it. And so I really went full bore, dude. And I have to be honest with you, I was probably a little bit insufferable for a little while because it was obsessed. I was talking to victim after victim after victim. I'm getting this. I've got somebody in rehab. I've got this going on. There's just so many things going on that at some point, I don't think there's been time for me to really. But I don't think it's about trust. I think it's more about, I also have to be completely honest with you. The idea of having a man at the ass end of this movement when I brought it this far to come in and be like, look at what I did.
Fair. Very
It's like a little
point.
bit irritating. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Sure.
so like I was careful of that because I found like I did see someone who was wonderful, worked at the White House and the Pentagon, a genuinely wonderful human being. But like at the same time, I'm like, if this person tries to be like, look how much you've accomplished since I got here, I would lose my shit entirely, like entirely. So I was like, I don't know. I think I think it's not time yet, and I think that the time will present itself for sure.
And I think that's an example. And the reason I brought that up, obviously, is I feel like there's so many women that are in your circumstance, although not directly,
Yeah.
victims, victims of survival. I mean, I think survivors, and someone in the chat, I often brain share with my chat. Someone said it's the trauma bond, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, I would imagine you experience that with more people that you've spoken to, because trauma is trauma. We all process it in different ways. But because the outward attacks on women and their bodily autonomy and their right to just be themselves, I don't know how other than to say it, to exist, you're right, must be just overwhelming. Although you're used to it, so it's not a surprise. And so many women are, sadly, right?
Yeah, I just do it loud, dude. I've just decided to be as loud as humanly possible, and just be myself. And I've learned that, like, it's funny because I get all these legal questions on my posts all the time. You shouldn't post this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, that's for people who aren't telling the truth and whose stories change. Mine has never changed. I've told the story 50,000 fucking times. It's the same because it happened. And so it doesn't, like, for me, that's what people are concerned about, but I don't care.
Sure.
I also don't care if I'm sued. I don't give a shit if they buck me. I don't care if they send me, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I just don't care because now I did my homework. I made friends with lawyers that I needed to make friends with.
Right.
I built a cause that people support.
Right.
And now I'm just like, suck it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you did it. You don't get to be quiet. You don't get to hide. You don't get to go down. No, you get to go down with me telling everybody you did this. Boop.
Cat's out of the bag now, as they say.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to take some questions? I've got some folks
Sure,
that are
sure,
interested in
absolutely.
talking to you. We'll do our best to try to monitor those questions. that
Yeah,
they're
I'm not
putting in.
worried.
So, I know, but I am, and I'm here to
You're the
make sure
sweetest.
that I can prove to you that you're in a safe space. So we'll bring up some folks if they have questions they can ask.
Sure.
And everybody, this is Julia Hubbard. I'm so grateful that Julia is here to share her story with us. There's more information on who you are and what your story is located in the link tree in your bio. There's fundraising opportunities out there for folks who want to support your cause. You want
Yes.
to talk a little bit about that while we go through some of the guests that have requested?
Sure. Yes. So it would be wonderful if you do want to donate to our cause. What I have found is that the only expert who is handling this is me. And so I've worked with Polaris. I've reached out to them, but the people who are coming out need special help. And I'm the one who's doing that right now. And so all of your donations actually directly go towards helping fund the cause of getting to these survivors and getting them help right now. And it helps keep the lights on while I do that, because this job has become kind of my full-time thing since coming out so publicly. So anything that you guys can donate would be super helpful. And I super, super appreciate you. And thank you for all listening.
I appreciate you saying that. All right, we'll bring some guests up. I'd like to try to rotate as many questions as we can through. And again, we just really appreciate Julia being here to share her story. Madam Gumdrop does not look like you're able to request. It seems like you might have gotten stuck in the TikTok spinning world. I'll bring up Ali Witchy. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Please give Julia, as she mentioned, pay apps and support for her are in her link tree in her bio. Do you have a question for Julia?
Not some. I actually kind of requested by accident, but I did want to just say thank you, Julia, for like being a voice about this. I myself, it took years to realize that like the things that happened to me at 18, I kind of went through a thing where I had a 25-year-old who dated me, and he was going to take me to New York for a weekend trip to visit his family. And when we got up there, the plan was not just a trip to come back home. I ended up being, I basically had a closet to sleep in, and all of a sudden the car didn't work, so I couldn't go anywhere, and I wasn't allowed to leave. And the only way I got out of that situation was eventually, like 3 months later, he got arrested for something else.
Right.
And I was able to, when his family was always there too, to kind of monitor me, and they all left me alone in the house, and I was able to call family and get them to like come meet me. And it was quite the situation. And I think it's important for us to say these things because a lot of people don't realize the situations that they're in, especially at that age.
Right. And the thing that I hope, if you don't mind, just because your story is so important, and I so hope that people and listeners hear this, you are of no fault. Just so you know, because I do this is all I do. You are at no fault, especially if you thought you loved this person, because traffickers use love. So please understand to never fault yourself for that, because that wasn't that was you trying to show love to someone that you had no other option because you were a captive. Does that make sense? So like, I just want you
Yeah.
to know that. You know what I mean? Like, I just want you to know.
No, I know it. I mean, and it took a long, long time for me. I mean, I'm to the point where I do kind of internalize that more and understand that. But I mean, it took a lot of years because, like you said, I mean, especially I am on the spectrum, so like at that point in time in my life, I trusted people
Yep.
blindly because I was the type of person who I wasn't ever treating people like that. It never even occurred to me
Sure.
that people could do these things to other human beings. Like, and it wasn't a naivety. It was just a like, my brain doesn't allow me to figure out ways to screw people over or hurt
Totally.
people.
Totally.
And so you don't assume that people are going to do that to you because you're like, if I'm operating from a place of honesty,
Yeah. So are
other
they.
people are. And it was a really hard thing because like I mean I come from a Christian family, but they kind of, once I turned 18, it was like you were left to your own devices. So I didn't have anybody to like step in, or they just kind of let me go. So like I said, it was just there was somebody interested in me, and at that point in my life, because of, I mean, I am the product of grape. I told this story last week. So like my whole life, I've had other guilt about just being that, and not feeling wanted because I wasn't asked for.
Right.
You know, so that led into a sense of like wanting to be loved and trying to find love.
Yes.
And so I think that was part of it too, is that the first person who really gave me any kind of attention in that way, I was like, oh, finally somebody, you know, sees me and cares about me. And then it turned into an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
You know, because it started out, we got up there and it was like, oh, we're gonna stay with my sister and brother-in-law, and okay, cool. But it's like, here's a mattress on a floor in this tiny room, and this is, now the car's broken down, so you can't go anywhere. And then it turned into the abuse and the SA regularly, and it was eye-opening to what the world could actually do to you. And so because I felt like I put myself in that situation, because I said, okay, I'll go, you know,
Right.
yeah, it took a lot of years to unravel that guilt and
Totally.
on myself. And I mean, my family didn't even know what I went through. It was humiliating having to call them and be like, please, can you come get me?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to tell them about what happened. I just played it off as like, oh, I just changed my mind. I just don't want to stay up here.
I totally get that.
And yeah, it was a really, really hard time.
I totally
You know, and I'm 43 now, and it's like I still have stuff to unpack
right.
from that.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story today. I'm sure that you're speaking for others, and I'm hoping that other people will feel safe to come up and have this conversation as well. Witchy, thank you
I
again
hope
for being here.
so.
I
And
appreciate
what
you
I
I
hope
having
so.
me.
want
Thank
to
you.
point out about Witchy's story, which is also really important, is that is most often how it happens. Someone pretends to love you. Someone says we're going on a trip together. Those are the quick schmaffickers, okay? The other ones are ones that come in and pretend to actually love you. You have a life together. You have kids together. That happens too. And that's another amazing example. Just so everybody knows, having a relationship where somebody sabotages your car is a huge red flag for schmafficking. Huge. If someone is messing with your car, they're getting repossessed, they're wrecking them, they're not working all of a sudden, and it's their fault. That is
Deflating tires, for
yes,
example.
Yes, those
Yeah.
things are control tactics that goes back
Right.
to coercion, and that's they start doing that, but they don't take ownership of it. So that was another really big red flag. Just wanted to
Nina,
point that
thank
out.
you for being here. Did you have a question for Julia?
I do. I haven't experienced trafficking necessarily, but I did grow up in a home with domestic violence, and I'm just hearing some of the things you were talking about, saying how there was, I don't remember the exact story, so correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a woman who like couldn't leave her house, couldn't had
Mhm,
her car privileges taken away, that sort of stuff.
mhm.
That is like, and I can't say whether it was related to like have sex with me or else, sorry, I don't know if I can say that, have schmex with me or else, but that's the sort of stuff my stepdad would do to my mom. Like he would kick us out of the house,
Yes.
but would take her keys away.
Mhm.
So we didn't have anywhere to go. He would shut off her phone so she couldn't call
Yep.
anybody.
Yeah, my
He
schmafficker did that.
he would like she would use her credit card to get a hotel room so that we'd have a place to sleep. And then the credit card bill would come because we would go back every time. The credit card bill would come, and then he would get mad that she used the credit card to give us a place to stay. So it's just like this cycle of
Yep.
like control. And I'm
Yes.
just curious, like, even if it's not connected to schmex,
Right.
is that still a form of trafficking?
So it could be.
Do
So
you
let
think?
me unpack that for you, right? If in
Okay.
that situation, he also required her to do, like, the house must be clean, the house dinner has to be made, chores that are labor that she is either not paid for or she's lucky to have a place to sleep,
Oh my
then
goodness.
yes. So if it was an exchange, like for him to pay the rent, my trafficker used to say all the time, for me to pay your rent, you better do this, which it was his rent too. Do you get what I'm saying? It was just a threat.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he would
yeah.
leverage things like that to get me to behave. Those behaviors are trafficking because that's either labor or schmex. Do you get what I'm saying? If your behavior, what he meant by behavior was if you don't start doing more work or have schmex with me or others, then you don't have access. So someone leveraging control in exchange for chores, that in a domestic relationship, it can be trafficking in that context.
So he didn't require that of her necessarily, but me and my brother
Mm-hmm.
were responsible for like keeping our house clean. And I don't mean like kids should have chores. I mean like
You're
if we didn't
describing.
do our chores quote unquote correctly, then we were, and I don't mean this figuratively, locked in our rooms. We had no TV, no radio, no books, no light, no nothing.
So
And
I could
there
make
was
that
no way we could ever meet the expectation that he was setting because it was meant to set us up for failure. It was meant to be like, I don't want you to have good things. And then it would be tied to your dad's not paying child support, which that's a whole other parental alienation conversation.
right.
So our chores were paying for our room and board. We were
That's trafficking.
children. We were children.
Yeah, that's trafficking for sure.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
There's a new
so
trauma to
that's it.
unpack.
So yeah, so if in the context, like one of the most shocking posts that ever happened and kind of put me on the map was I commented on this woman's post. She said, "My mother taught me such a great work ethic by forcing us to work in her cleaning business. We were lucky to have a place to sleep and a hot dog to eat, but we learned such a great work ethic." And I said, "I'm so sorry you were trafficked by your mom," because I'm autistic and that's how I do things. But like genuinely. That is because you are not owed. That person leveraged the idea that you, in exchange for your labor, you had to exchange your labor for sleeping quarters. That's an exchange of labor
And food.
and
Food
food.
was also
Yeah.
leveraged.
That is. I could make a very strong legal argument for that. I don't know if it would. If the statute of limitations has ended, but I mean, yes. Now, I don't know if the TVPA was enacted at that point because we've only had it since 2000 and I believe 3. But yes, I mean, in the context of that today, one could do that. Yes. If it was on any larger scale, like he had you do that for your grandmother's house or any other time or any other places, then there's an even stronger argument for that.
Well, no, it was never really on a larger scale. It was definitely always just like to control
Yes.
us. And in 2003, it didn't end altogether, but it ended for me because that's
Sure.
the year that he threatened to unalive me.
Oh my God.
And I went to the police, and the police told me I was 17. I didn't need my mom. I could press charges if I wanted to.
Oh my God.
And she begged me, pleaded with me to not. And I actually just shared this story on my own platform yesterday because it was 22 years ago on January 15th that it happened.
Wow.
But he threatened that, and well, like I said, I went to the police, all of that, and she begged me, and I said I was only 17. I was still very much in all of this, scared, and I told her I wouldn't, but I was done. If he ever touched me again, like this was it. It's not happening anymore.
Wow. Very brave. I want you to know, very, very, very brave. Most people don't do that.
Agreed, Lena. Thank you for sharing your story. I mean, I think it's important. I know I could sense that you were, like you said, more trauma to unpack, but I think it's important that we all can align on what trafficking is. And I appreciate Julia being here to help explain it to us. But again, thank you for being here, Lena. I appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Have a great day.
Give me a follow, sweetie, so we can stay in touch.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Julia, I had a question. Everybody, please continue to tap and share the live. We're talking to Julia Hubbard, who's brave enough to stand up to trafficking and just in calling awareness to it and advocating for victims, which is what we've always tried to do. Is there a type? And what I mean by that is, I know you and I touched briefly on the church and how the patriarchy is involved in so many things.
Yes.
In your research of traffickers, is there a type?
This is my favorite question.
Traffics and or is trafficked, I guess.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Not to be trafficked. Anyone can be. So that answers that. It's literally anyone. If you're in a bad situation, you're at 20 times more likely. I mean, you are astronomically more, the more vulnerable you are, like the more in need of housing, the more in need
foster
of
kids. I think people who've left the foster system, things like that, right?
Totally. People who are escaping violence, people who are, all of those people. So we have our immigrant communities as well, but I specialize in domestic trafficking. So I will break down those things for you. A trafficker, though, this is my favorite question. Let me breathe. Take a deep breath. A trafficker is a misogynist out loud. Okay? A trafficker, in order to be a trafficker, you have to believe that other people exist for your usage. Most people don't have that, okay? So traffickers genuinely believe that the people around them, for example, give you an example. My ex-husband's Facebook, on his Facebook, it says, a single dad who builds eco-friendly houses during nap time, okay? Now, the man's a trafficker. He doesn't have a job, right? That what I'm saying is that he used the child in order to market his business. Do you get what I'm saying? That's the type of person who would do this. Okay. So like people who say things like that, or bring their kids to meetings, or their wife. But more specifically, it's the really sneaky, it's men who want schmecks without responsibility. In intimate partner relationships, where it gets weird is when they start wanting schmexual situations that are outside of the normal of a marital relationship. So like asking you to go to S clubs, right? That's weird. It doesn't matter how hot you are. Does that make sense? Like that's not normal. But schmaffickers in particular are a misogynistic type. But when they're not men, it's still misogyny. They're still looking at people like resources. And that's why I tell people that, I know this sounds crazy, but trafficking is really just misogyny in action. It's really just putting to behavior what misogyny entails inside your head, right?
So talking about, so something you said there, it kind of reminded me of like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing, like asking your partner consensually to experiment
Right.
not what you're referring to.
No, no,
Okay.
I'm talking about making it like a requirement.
Gotcha.
Like, hey, like, for example, I don't hide this part of my story. I'm bisexual. Didn't know that. I was Mormon. I grew up Mormon. So when he found me, I was like, didn't know. So there was a period of time where I was just interested, right? Like I was just like, that's interesting, right? Then I own that. I own that shit. It's when it becomes like a job. Like for him, he would just constantly require that new people or that my friends constantly showed him their boobs or what. It was a constant pressure, sexual pressure
Gotcha.
all the time. Just like almost like that I had to feed his addiction and like that I was responsible somehow for his experience. And that this was for the family. That was my experience. And because I'm autistic, that's kind of how that happened for me. But for others, it really is just like, remember the Maya Angelou quote when she says, when somebody who shows you who they are,
Believe them.
the first time,
Yeah.
right? Like, I wish I would have known that because the
Right.
first weird sexual situation he put me in, I loved him so much that I didn't go. I did. I was like, I'm uncomfortable, and I pulled him aside. But it wasn't like a, no, this is bothersome. You know what I mean? It was like more like, hey, I don't like this, which is still not consent. You know what I mean? Which is still not consent. But like they push those boundaries. So traffickers push sexual boundaries all the time. They're constantly, there's a need for control, because what they realize is if you realize their behavior is unacceptable, just like that last caller,
Right.
her mom begged her not to do it. It's because the consequences for her, right? It's because the trafficker puts the consequences on her. Does that make sense? And that
Does.
normal people don't do that. Most
It's
people
your fault or any victim's fault, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Normal people, when called out, when you get a ticket, the guy who screams at the cop and freaks out, red flag. Do you know what I mean? Like there are people who just don't believe that or that the laws apply to them, or that they're somehow, they have very main character energy. Also, I've noticed.
Right.
They believe that people they're owed this.
Right.
It's very odd. And when you meet one, you'll be like, got it. You know what I mean?
You talked about the church too, and again, I won't. We can go as far down that road as you'd like, but we see, and I sadly our friend Daniela couldn't join us today, and I bring this up and I share with you her story. So Daniela Misnick Young, for those of you who don't remember, Daniela grew up in the Children of God sex cult, and then joined the military, and she's talked very candidly about how even though she was SA'd as part of the cult, that became a source of power for her and
Right.
control over men, right? Because she was taught that sex is the tool
Right.
to gain power, right?
Totally.
So I would imagine that would be a similar trait for traffickers, and in particular, those who acquire wealth, and thus
Yes.
more power. They're not used to being told no, right?
Yes. Yes. There is a huge part that is like not like no is just an obstacle. No is just an obstacle for them to overcome, and they just find the obstacle to overcome, whatever your no is. And what I find is the more resources you have, the easier it is to find whatever that button is, right? Whatever that button is. But for me, that they didn't have to do all of that. I mean, in the end, there was a lot of like withholding of like food and like normal thing, like not normal, but like necessary things. But like they knew, dude. They knew what they were doing. They knew, and the church definitely empowered them. I'm happy to talk about that. The church, in all of its patriarchal yuckiness, has really set up just a beautiful sanctuary for predators. It just has. There's the laws don't really apply to the church the same way as they apply to everybody else. There's all these bylaws and bullshit. And we just continue to use it to lift up abusers. I mean, and that's why when I'm done, if I win this, there's a lot of things I want to do, including starting a church. Um, but I think that the church, as it stands right now, especially as I hear other women's stories of religious indoctrination is one of their greatest tools of oppression for us.
Right.
Because if they can get you to internalize that you report to a imaginary man, then they can get you to do almost anything, right? Like, so for me, I believe the secret handshake got you into heaven. Can you imagine my naivety?
Right.
So, like,
Especially because you speak of it in terms of indoctrination, right? And
yes,
that indoctrination manifests itself in many different ways. It's the belief set. It's your soul will be saved when somebody
right,
who's already susceptible to it, and then especially when you bring smex and or trafficking in it, thinking that you are responsible for things if you don't perform these functions to either provide for your man, provide for the church. Oftentimes, what I've read about this is that men and the church see themselves as one and the same,
yes,
meaning that women are expected to be committed to the church. Therefore, the men in their life, and this is not entirely about the church in this case, but I think we're trying to frame the picture because you talked about there is a type. And
yes,
I've always wondered about this element, especially since talking to you. Um, People don't start off with positions of wealth and prominence all the time, although many do, but there's so many more that don't, who
right,
perhaps aspire to be billionaires, aspire to be in positions of power. Then they see members of our political body in these positions of power who have built their reputation as misogynist, womenizers, abusers, and they become the model. The young men become red pilled, right? So there's
right.
another example of how we're developing types, so to speak, right? We're creating the next generation of fucking traffickers
Right.
in a way.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that, and that's kind of the point, is like all of these different organizations that are like, saying that YT men are oppressed, um are really just basically our homes for people who think like traffickers, because that you're hitting my point, is that the church uplifts and upholds these same structures that men are above reproach, and
Exactly.
that
Especially white men.
women,
Right.
yeah, and that women are property.
Right.
And what I'm seeing as I watch the political landscape changing is my movement for me my intensity grows, because I genuinely believe, and maybe you can call me crazy, when people find out this message, just like your caller did, they find out that they were schmafficked. I think the world's going to look at this very differently. And I hope that my case genuinely does change the way that people look at human trafficking. We have to look at it differently. Yes, it happens like Diddy, but if you'll notice, Cassie was just abused. It looked like a domestic before.
Right. Right.
You see what I'm saying? But that's the real life behind the curtain. And that's the same. If you look at all my Facebook when I was married to him, it's all happy, lovey-dovey, blah, 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 blah. No, dude. No, dude. That's not what was happening at all.
We're speaking with Julia Hubbard, who's been kind and gracious enough to come and talk to us. Do you have a little longer that you can stick?
Oh, yeah. No, I've dedicated the morning to you.
I appreciate you very much. April, thanks for joining. Do you have a question? April, are you there? April Day, are you there? Okay, we'll bring up another guest. Anika. Anika, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Did you have a question for Julia?
Anika, how are you this morning?
You have
I
an
do.
echo. Would you mind just scrolling? Would you mind just scrolling out of the app and then coming right back?
I do.
Yeah, that may try that. See, come on back.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for your service, Julia. I
I'll be right back.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
So I have a long story, but I'm going to make it short, and I have a question.
Sure.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to try to make it as TikTok clean as possible.
I got you, girl.
So my ex-husband groomed me. I came straight out of super conservative evangelical, and throughout my marriage, he didn't work. I'm the only one that worked, and it was under the premise that he's going to get his degree, and then when he's done, I can get my degree. And he changed degrees like 4 times, and he had a weight range for me that kept decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And if I didn't get that weight range, then he would R-word me.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and he,
I'm so sorry, honey. I just want to give you a hug through the phone.
thank you. So I was the only one working. And he would take, I was a hairstylist, and he would take my tips at the end of the day. And if there was any change, he would be like, because he had a rule that we don't spend any money, but he could spend the money. And he like lied to everybody and told everybody that like he wouldn't let me go around friends or family or anything. And he would just tell them that I was working or I didn't feel good or
Yep.
whatever. He had a tracker on my car.
This is trafficking, my love.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, this is trafficking. This is called labor trafficking. This is called intimate partner labor trafficking. This is when someone stays home, collects your wages. The first question Polaris is going to ask you on the phone is, did he take your money?
Yeah.
Yes. When was the last time he sold you? Would be the second question. And if there was no answer to that, he didn't sell me, you'd be labor trafficked. So
Gotcha.
I know that's a huge, but see, that's your story is so important. So I want to keep you here for just a second to highlight, first of all, your strength. And I admire you.
Thank you.
Super admire you for that. That is it. So this is when I say 27.6 million cases are estimated by the United Nations, and we only catch 115 globally. It's stories like yours that need to be heard, because if you
Well, I
would
wrote
call
it in
the
a book.
police, good,
So
that's amazing.
yeah.
That would now be classified as intimate partner domestic or labor trafficking. And so that's something where you are essentially a hostage for your wages. And then you also have to perform whatever else duties. They lie to everyone around you. Force, fraud, threat, coercion. Do you see what I'm saying? So the other big symptom is when they introduce you as needing their guardianship. That's a huge symptom. Traffickers start coming into your world and telling everyone around you that you need them, that they're going to fix you, that they're going to regulate your medications, sometimes that they're going to take guardianship of you, that your kids need them because you are not doing that good of a job, but you are now with their help. That type of shit. That is trafficker. And nobody knows that. So thank you for coming up here and taking a chance, because you're getting it. And I'm so grateful that you're getting it. I'm so sorry that happened to you at the same time. But truly, stories like these that are going to get this out, because this is what happens in everyday America. And we have no idea.
Right.
We have
Like
no idea.
nobody knew until I wrote my book and I gave it to my parents to read. And only 2 of my parents read it. The other one just didn't care.
Yes.
But
I'm so
because
sorry.
he was also the same way, like my dad.
Yep. And see what the horrible thing is, my father, just to give you some camaraderie, honey. My dad, who is a doctor here in DC, I live in DC, I work in DC. He is a doctor. He's very wealthy. He is upset with me because I'm standing up for others. He came from the same culture that these fathers that I'm hearing you, right? They're like, just take care of yourself. You want to know why he hates this mission and this movement? It's because he does this stuff to his wife.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so this movement is going to be a movement of loving men and women, because this is a tactic that I believe is pervasive in America. And I believe we've just been calling it domestic life.
Right.
You know what I mean? But see, your story is so important because so many people are out there like you right now, handing their paycheck over to some person, whether it's their parents or their boyfriend or their husband or their employer. Like, most people also don't understand, darling, that like, if you have a boss that drives you to and from work, who also saves some of your paychecks for you, you're being trafficked. That's not a relationship. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, and you're getting it. And so I thank you so much for that, because your case is one of the enormous amounts of cases that we're missing. the huge, vast amounts of cases. Because what do you do when you call police? I get you, babe. Like, what do? You call them and you're like, how do I explain this?
Yeah, because they would have taken his word. He's a
100%.
diagnosed psychopath.
I believe you. I believe you.
Like he's not a good person.
No, I feel you, babe. And to be honest with you, I've never met a trafficker that wasn't either a psychopath or a narcissist or both. They have this because they believe people exist for their use.
Right.
And so we don't have that. Like, you sound like the sweetest, kindest person. Like, they use us because we have a no limit give. You know what I mean?
Well, I do now.
Yeah, right. They teach us that we have to have one.
Yeah.
And but like, thank you so much for sharing that story, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's when I teach people about this, you're the perfect example, because long before he introduced another schmexual partner into the relationship, I was schmafficked because he treated me the way that you're describing.
Right.
Does
So
that make sense?
what from here can I do? Because this was in like 2010, 2006 to 2010.
2006 to 2010. I would call Polaris, so there's a report of it.
Okay.
Polaris is
Hey, Julia, let's talk about a little bit what Polaris is, or we're giving the advice
So-
to that. I think I've seen a few people ask that question.
Sure. Polaris is called Polaris Project. They are the nationwide organization that manages the human trafficking hotline. They also do some of the best comprehensive research on human trafficking, as well as they work very closely with HSI, who is 80% of the time who is investigating human trafficking. And so they work in combination with local resources to help you with whatever local things you need, like food, shelter, etc., if they can find you those services. And then additionally, they will hook you up with either they can get you to a legal place if you would like to take your action in a civil matter, which I'm not sure. You'd have to speak with a lawyer on that. But I mean, that's what the Human Trafficking Legal Center is for. Amara Legal in DC. There are other advocacy places that will refer you to places, but just recording those numbers, what I want is to boost our numbers and go, okay,
That's important.
yeah, we are being trafficked. We need to say that. We just didn't know that we were. And I think that alone will help. So they are the ones who do that. If there's something that they can do criminally, I do believe that the statute of limitations is 10 years. However, explaining that happened to you so that they can look out for that, because also I train their people also. It's really great to be like, I heard it from, you don't have to say my name if you don't want to, but also like to let them know that where you got it is helpful to them, to help track where they're getting it too is very helpful, just to know where this information is coming from. If you want, you don't have to, but it's just about figuring out what's working, right? What's working and what's not.
Anika, thank you so much for jumping in today. I hope this helps a little bit.
It did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yep.
Appreciate
Bye.
you. Just some breaking news. Does look like SCOTUS has upheld the ban.
Huh.
So it does look like TikTok is going bye-bye unless there's some intervention. We're still kind of navigating through it a little
it
bit.
weird? But I'm not worried.
Our crack team is on it. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I had a question for you during that part of the conversation. You and I touched briefly on this about how the pressure of women in corporate America,
Yes.
right? And I think you shared with me that, oftentimes when we hear the horrible, despicable, misogynistic traits, or a saying that the only reason women can succeed is because they'll sleep their way to the top.
Right.
And we know that women are under pressure in the workplace. Many, many examples of that, right?
Right.
That would be example of trafficking.
Yes. Yes. In fact, well, here it is. So we're going to break it down. If a woman, now this is exploitation, she can exploit herself. So I don't want to just put all of the weight on this on men entirely. I just want to make it clear that there are situations where women have leveraged their own sexuality in order to do that. And I don't want to come at that I don't want to come at this issue and pretend like that doesn't happen. And that is not trafficking, right? That's a person who has prostituted themselves, right? So we would call them that. But a boss, however, in the culture that you speak of specifically, yes, that's very pervasive. I mean, truly, because So here's another example, right? I was a waitress at a strip club. I thought I was dating my boss, who then took my paychecks, right? Like that happens. that happens. But so often in the workplace, women are sexualized and then kind of held hostage by that. I mean, it does happen. And I don't think that we're recognizing it in those spaces either. I think that's an excellent point because, men are leveraging these tools in all places of power. There no places of power that men hold are we exempt from this problem, right? So the workplace is a big one. I was labor trafficked by a boyfriend through that means afterwards, after I escaped Rick. So, I mean, yes, it happens all the time. And I mean, it even happens with women. For example, I had a survivor one time who an advocate grabbed her and then started collecting her checks on behalf of the government. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just, it's in every situation. So like, again, like the Natalia Grace, I was watching this morning where they use her for her checks, right? This little girl, this disabled little girl. So it's like everywhere. But it was a man who was in a position of power, who was in a God position, right? Who owned a church. And they adopted this little girl and then used her for her checks and then brainwashed her. And then it's just crazy. There's so many ways in which this is happening, but lots with men in power.
Thank you. Good morning, Sarah. Thank you for requesting. Do you have a question for Julia?
I do, I guess, with respect to corporate America, because I think that I've experienced pushing back, and I felt the wrath of it. So I left corporate because, in my mind, I'd rather support community and focus on local and entrepreneurs. For those that are stuck in that situation, like, here's the thing that I experienced was I was the one woman that was on the leadership team. And so a lot of women in the office appreciated that. But they also saw it fail. And so it, like, I think when we're in these situations, like, we can crumble. I love the fact that you're bringing this to light, but like there's the fact of like things that people are afraid to say out loud.
Sure.
For example, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm afraid to say like, well, maybe I was, disrespected, or maybe, but that's kind of the tough guy in us women, trying not to be, we're strong and whatever. But being able, so how do we make it okay and stop hesitating and saying this happened?
I have my only answer to that is to radically accept it. I think what men fear most, and I can't say this enough, I think what weak men fear most is that women own themselves. I think that truly, because truly, what would I hate to sound altruistic, but truly, we've got to make peace with ourselves. We have to own our shit. We need to literally just say, I don't have to be what you want me to fucking be.
Yeah.
Own it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's my strategy, is just listen, I'm ridiculous. I'm sarcastic. I'm an asshole. I'm also funny. Do you know what I mean? It's okay to be all these things. And I don't know what happened, but something broke in me, honey. And I just decided one day, fuck it. I'm just going to be wild and crazy in my damn self, despite them. And what happened is it pissed them off.
Yeah.
And I love that shit.
Wow.
So like, what I'm saying is own it. Yes, I did that. Yes, I smoked. I did that with you. Yep, I sure did. I sure fucking did. Yep, I sure did. Do it. Yeah, I did. And you know what you did to me? Because I was there too. You know what I mean? Like, I am so tired of being, can I have some justice, sir? Justice. I'm so tired of justice, sir. Please, justice, please. I'm so tired. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm so tired of it. So what I'm going to do is get loud. I'm going to get loud. I'm going to own my own shit. I'm going to tell you that, yes, I did some questionable shit. Yeah, I made some stupid choices. Yep, I was definitely naive. I also loved the shit out of that man. And I did all of that because I loved him. And he lied to me. Do you know what I mean? And I think that we just need to say, you've lied to us. Do you know what I mean? Like all of us, you fucking lied to us. And that's my strategy. I don't know what everybody else's is, but if they can't hurt my feelings, if I don't have feelings about it, you know what I mean?
I love that. I feel like what I should say is that I actually can breathe a little bit lighter right now.
Oh, yay! That makes me so
I
happy.
definitely followed you and went to all the socials that I can, and facts. I truly like. What a great space. You've produced like a great space where people feel safe and comfortable, and this is awesome.
I appreciate you saying that.
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you, Sarah. You have a lovely day.
Cheers.
That was a great question because it is. It's just fuck it. I am weird. I'm also
love
a
that.
dick. I'm also not nice sometimes. I'm loud. I'm also funny. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to be all those things, and we need to stop pretending like I have to be this buttoned up, or any woman. You know what I mean? That we have to present some certain way is so irritating.
I feel like, my brain is just firing now that looks like we're going to be losing this space to have these conversations that are so incredibly important. But I guess, I'm not even trying to ask this question, Julia, but are there in your research and your big brain just firing in many different directions as you're kind of compiling your case and you're putting all this data together and you're talking about advocacy, are there signs for women?
Yes.
And is it consistent? What should women be on the lookout for?
So for the intimate partner trafficking, which is what I specialize in, which is what happened to me, I don't think anybody else knows these signs. So I'm so glad. I think they do, but we're slow with the data. So this is kind of what I wish I would have known, right? Anyone who comes into your life and thinks that they need guardianship of you, or that they need to speak for you, or that they need to change your medical providers, or that that changes your schedule. Like if they require you to see certain people instead, or like maybe we should try this doctor, right? Those things are not normal. I've never dated a person who wasn't a trafficker who did that, right? So that's a big one. This person should never demean you in public. If this person comes into the relationship, say you got into a fight, and after that fight, they're different. They start saying things like, yes, well, she's doing better since the recent falling out. They make it seem like your fight was some huge mental breakdown of yours. That's another one, right? Because that's the way that they leverage your own emotional response to their abuse against you, and they make you look like the responsible party, right? So that's a big one.
Victim blaming again in a
Totally.
packaged
It's like
differently, right?
100%, like gaslighting on a life scale, right? If they're starting to make you question, like my trafficker used to get in my car and park it somewhere else, so I felt nuts. Like we're talking like true weird, right? These manipulations, you're not losing your mind. If you're in a relationship with someone who constantly is questioning your sanity and asking, if they can help you with that, and that sounds like trauma, overly helpful with your medical those are some that I wish I had known. I wish I would have known that seeing his doctors, seeing his people, right, was setting me up to be medicated into oblivion so that I couldn't function, right?
So that topic right there, because are you familiar with House Resolution 7?
I don't know that I am, but I can look it up.
I got it for you right here.
Okay.
So what you just talked about his suggestion as to what your course of treatment may be, right?
Yep.
Our Congress literally wants to legislate that. So HR 7, the title of that bill, and this is relevant for our conversation. The title of the bill is recognizing the importance of access to comprehensive, high quality, life affirming medical care for women of all ages. Sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Until you read the fine print.
Oh, Lord.
Whereas health care for women should also address the needs of men, families, and communities as they relate to women's health care.
Okay, that's
so they're legislating trafficking.
Yeah, dude, that literally oh my God. So this is why I'm coming as fast as I can, right? Because this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. They're starting to legislate these types of control over women, which is when my brain, when I started seeing these types of things, went, okay, so they need a war, right?
Right.
Right? Sorry if I can't
Right.
say that word. So you mean you want to RIOT, I see.
Correct.
So yeah, they are doing that. Imagine if your husband could have you sterilized. Imagine if your husband decided, you know what I'm saying, that it was time for you to have a baby and SA'd you so that you would be forced to carry.
Right.
Like what I'm doing to combat that, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I actually put legal arguments together for forced birth being forced labor. I can't come up with any other
Yeah.
reason why it's not, because under the TVPA, forced labor is any, I mean, it just fits, right? You didn't have consent in order for the job to occur. It is a job to carry a baby. And so it would be forced labor that would cause physical harm. So, like, I've thought about that a lot. But that's what I'm saying, is that we have to know these are the signs and symptoms, because I think that we've all gotten giant, like huge distractions. And I'm not saying that there isn't division and that there doesn't need to be, there does, right? However, this issue affects all of us, and it's bad, because if they start rolling back these protections, then we really are in, 1950s, daddy, can I go to TGI Fridays?
Yeah, I mean, I think HR 7, another language about removing rights for representatives of the LGBTQA community, is just literally almost legislating trafficking.
Oh my God.
I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but after
No,
our
it
conversation
is.
today, that's what it sounds like.
It really does sound like that, and that's super scary to me. I mean, that's what they wanted. My trafficker, literally, my ex-husband recovered. His face is all over my page, y'all. Feel free to share that shit everywhere. He's on the loose right now. But that's kind of why I'm doing this, right? Like there's so many things that are scary about what's coming, and
Right.
it's all right out of my trafficker's playbook, and nobody seems to get it. Like, these laws are what he would write in order to keep me and me specifically, right? If he were to legislate things, this is what he would legislate to keep me under his thumb, and that's terrifying.
It is. Just a quick side note, the Supreme Court unanimously upheld a federal law banning TikTok beginning Sunday unless it's sold by its China-based parent company, holding that the risk to a national security posed by its ties to China overcomes concerns about limiting free speech by the app or its 170 million users in the U.S. A sale does not appear imminent, and although experts have said the app will not disappear from existing users' phones once the law takes effect on January 19th, new users won't be able to download it and updates won't be available. That will eventually render the app unworkable, the Justice Department has said in its court filing. The decision came against the backdrop of unusual political agitation by President-elect Trump, who vowed that he could negotiate a solution in the administration of President Joe Biden, which has signaled it won't enforce the law beginning Sunday, his final day in office. Trump, mindful of TikTok's popularity and his own 14.7 million followers on the app, finds himself on the opposite side of the argument from prominent Senate Republicans who fault TikTok's Chinese owner for not finding a buyer before now. So that's the deal.
Yeah.
AD,
SCOTUS
welcome.
gonna
Did
SCOTUS.
you have a question for Julia?
Oh, well, question commentary, actually, Julia. Thank you so much for being here. Something you said early on, which I think really I want to emphasize, and I know you've been doing a phenomenal job of that with all the incredible stories that have come up here and shared with you. Full background. Hello, I host with Steve on Fridays. I'm kind of the house mental health therapist for our team, and kind of cover that aspect of a lot of the stuff we talk about. So I am incredibly honored that you're here and helping us do this important conversation. And thank you for your courage, and thank you for everything you're doing. I want, yeah, and even me in my field, I'm learning today. We can all learn, right? Because I have clients who've been in these situations, and I don't know that I've ever framed it as
It is though.
Right. And thank you. Like, this has expanded my understanding even greater than I already thought it was. And I just wanted to everyone out there, I just wanted to give an example of, I think it's so important that we know how to speak to each other about this. I was recently on a cruise and, happy joy. And on the cruise, I met a lovely woman and we were talking and she began to tell me, oh yeah, I came here with this guy. I just met him a little while ago and he asked me to go on this cruise. And I was like, hey, that's cool. And he promised me a fun time. He said he'd cover all the expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Never ever talked about what she was supposed to give in return. There was no like understanding exchange, just like it was completely like, I like you. Hey, I like you so much. I got this cruise booked. Do you want to join me? Kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Right. And so she proceeds to tell me, well, ever since we got on the boat, though, you know how we have the boat, we're supposed to have internet. He cut the internet off. Like he's logged into the internet in a different way that I can't access it. And he told me he would like help, he'd make sure that I had money to buy things on the boat. But he cut the credit card off. Like, I don't know what to do because I was under the impression like he promised me all these things. And I was like, hold up. And so my little spidey sense is going up. But again, not from the context of how you're talking about it, right? I was just like, oh, there's some misogyny. Okay, we already know.
Right.
So he and he were on the deck of the boat, and he ends up walking by like several times, and she's like, there he is, there he is, there he is, and he just kept kind of walking by, kind of just doing a little cruise by, watching us speak, and I just kind of was talking, and then he sat down and was eyeballing us from away. And then he proceeds to come over and sit down and talk to her. And she was trying to be like, I'm talking to my new friend. And he's like, well, why aren't you? He started to like press her about, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I finally was like, I'm going to need you to scoot over and leave her alone. She asked you to stop talking to her. She asked you to give her space and you're not doing it. And now I'm going to say something because I was quiet until he clearly was. And so then she walked away and then he came over to talk to me. And so then my kids and the people that they've made friends with came over and sat down and got the story. And then they started talking to him. And let me tell you, within 30 minutes, that internet was back on and that credit card was back authorized.
And now now that you've had this part of this conversation, AD, you were I want to get back to Julia. You're referring to that as an example of trafficking that you may not have been aware of.
Exactly.
It was definitely, like, without question. The whole point. So that's a very good example of either I don't know about what type because I have no idea, but where someone offers you a job or a vacation or some sort of stay or relationship, whether it's a short term or long term. And they just say, yeah, let's go do this thing. And then you get there and the nature of that changes. And it's not what they said to you. That's fraud, right? That means they took you by fraud. And then he's transported on a cruise ship, right? He's transported her. And now he's coercing and controlling her. Now we just have to understand for what, right? As soon as we answer that question, we can, but like that's a police issue for sure.
We can make some assumptions.
Yeah, that's a police issue.
Oh yeah, she was very clear about what he was in private asking of her.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
AD, thanks for jumping in, friend. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you very much.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Amy.
So, Julia, I guess at this point, I'm just disgusted. I don't know how else to describe it, but like I guess we've talked about advice. We've talked about warning signs. We've talked about Polaris. And we've talked about all these causes. What else would you like to talk about, and what other messages, or what else would you like to share? We talked about the fact that you need resources to help in your fight. All of your various pay apps and more resources are located in the link tree in your bio. Where will you be when we're not on TikTok? Things like that. So how can we inform our community?
Sure. I think I'm gonna do YouTube. I'm definitely off. I'm on Meta. I can't delete anything because I'm in a federal case, but I don't want to use it. But I guess I feel like TikTok is gonna be okay. I genuinely do, and I'm easy to find on Instagram at Julia Hub. Not that I really want to use Instagram, but I guess we're forced. But I am at the same handle at Julia Hub on Instagram. I guess I really want the world to know. I mean, yes, I need help. Yes, we need funds. But to be honest with you, These are the moments, Steve, that make me feel better. Like, these are the moments that make me hungry. I've been anorexic, everyone, for 4 years. This took a toll on me, and that's how it manifested. And so I've been hungry because people are starting to get it. Like, I didn't know it was making me sick. And so you guys sharing and finding my page and sharing that with people who have experienced things like that is such an enormous part of this work, and it's free and you can do it from your phone. And we only have a couple of days. So, like, please go to my page, comment that you want to buy the products that I'm not selling you. I don't sell anything. And help me get this message to the people that you've recognized maybe in this live. But that's the message, is that we're missing it, right? So we just, on this call, on this live, we found 3 cases
Yeah.
of schmafficking
At
that
least
were,
that we spoke to.
yeah, that we spoke to.
Yeah.
God even knows in the comments. And
Right.
that's my point, is that this work is going to take all of us. And what they don't want us to know, this law exists, because this really does fight their misogyny. And so it really is important that we understand some pieces of legislation, and this one is one of them. Because I've known so many people who are not metaphorically held hostage, right, by another person in exchange for either their work or their body. And I just, if you can't answer these questions, do they take all of your money, or do they take some of your money? Do they take your money? And that's a yes. You need to call Polaris, because that is the first question that they asked me when I realized, oh my God, wait.
I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball.
Sure.
What would be your advice to men?
To men, look out for your friends and your family. Listen, this is just a culture. This is, men, if you have figured out that this is wrong, then I need you to advocate with us. I need you to call out your brothers and fathers when they do these things. We need to change the culture and the understanding of what love and relationships look like. And we need to use empathy and kindness and our voices to elevate this message. We have to be able to call it out when we see it, hold others accountable. But I mean, we don't have to let it get to schmafficking. You know what I mean? If you see these abuses taking place, this is also the same things of domestic V, right?
Lock, talk, the whole nine.
Yeah, the whole thing. Stop it. We're not property. We actually, we do all kinds of other stuffs. And, it's about really, men allies are our most important allies, because you guys are the ones who can get the message to people who are struggling, and people who may not want to hear it. Women immediately identify, it feels like, but men have a harder time with, reflecting on their behavior sometimes. Yeah. and figuring out, that they've played a role in this. Like, it was the same thing for me when I came out of my religious indoctrination and racism and all this stuff that I've been taught. It's a process, but I think it's a noble process, and I admire any man who's ever done it, of just listening, and
I've talked about this before about it's people that look like me that have created a system that benefits people who look like me. Right. Therefore, we are the problem. Therefore, it is all men until it's no men. Right. I just admire you so much. I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today.
You're the sweetest.
Whatever's going to happen with TikTok, I'm also on YouTube. Julia, you said you're at YouTube. All your socials are the same handle, correct?
Yes, but I'm going to start a YouTube. I have a feeling that TikTok's not going anywhere, truly, but okay. I just have a feeling that it's not. But I mean, if it does, I just have amassed 120,000 followers in the last 3 weeks. I'll be sad, but the mission still goes on. I have other projects in the works with different places and projects, and the message is not going to be lost. So it's coming. Everyone will see it. It just may not be on TikTok.
Well, again, thank you so very, very much. You have my number. What we've learned in our little Facts family is that once you become part of our family, you're stuck with us like gum on the shoe.
Well, I love that.
So you're stuck with us.
Well, I don't have any great family facts, so I love that. You guys are the best.
Well, again, thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate you so very, very much, Julia.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Facts.
You got it. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Wow. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. That was crazy. I hope. I'm just watching the mod chat, and I'm just watching some of the conversations that are happening in our chat about people who were victims of trafficking. I mean, Julia was very clear: traffic of labor, traffic of your body, whatever it might be. That was really, 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 really great. Um, yeah. Obviously, we'll stay in touch. I'll keep reminding you all of where Julia's going. Like she said, there's court cases that she can't mention, all those kinds of things. I'll do my best to try to update you all. Um, yeah, that was I'm gobsmacked. You guys, you know me. I'm very rarely speechless, but I happen to be speechless at this moment. All right, so we've got about half an hour, and then I think there's a special edition of the U.S. McAngry show today with Matt. From what I've been told, he'll have a special guest. So we're going to end at 11 o'clock to head on over there. Can somebody confirm, Legend, can you confirm the Discord for me that is still happening so that we can announce it, so we can provide some context? All right. I want to go back to the TikTok ban. For those of you who don't know, it was a unanimous decision today in the Supreme Court. The TikTok will be banned beginning Sunday unless it's sold by Chinese-based parent company, holding that the risk to national security posed by its ties to China overcomes concerns about limiting speech. Although, last time I checked, we had a constitutional right to free speech. I guess not. Sale does not appear imminent, and although experts have said that the app will not disappear from existing users' phones once the law takes effect on the 19th, new users won't be able to download it, and updates will not be available that will eventually render the app unworkable. The Justice Department said in court filings the decision came against the backdrop of unusual political agitation by President-elect Trump, who vowed that he could negotiate a solution, and the administration of President Joe Biden, which has signaled that it will not enforce the law beginning on Sunday, his final full day in office. Trump, mindful of TikTok's popularity and his own 14.7 million followers on the app, finds himself on the opposite side of the argument from prominent Senate Republicans who fault TikTok's Chinese owners for not finding a decision. It's unclear what options are open to Trump once he's sworn in as the president on Monday. The law allowed for a 90-day pause in the restrictions on the app if there had been progress toward a sale before it took effect. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, who defended the law at the Supreme Court for the Democratic Biden administration, told the justices last week that it's uncertain whether the prospect of a sale, once law is in effect, could trigger the 90-day respite for TikTok. At arguments, the justices were told by a lawyer for TikTok and ByteDance Limited, the Chinese technology company that its parent, how difficult it would be to consummate a deal, especially since Chinese law restricts the sale of the proprietary algorithm that has made the social media platform so wildly successful. The app allows, well, you know. So, all right. So our plan is this. I am on Favorited. I am on Red Note. I do not know if you'll find me there. I am on YouTube. You know, we've been streaming live on YouTube, and we will host lives on YouTube. So if you've ever followed me, or if even if you hate me, because I know I have plenty of haters of my 106,000 followers, you'll find me on YouTube. It's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. I will continue to provide spaces for people. It may turn into a different kind of format. One of the beauties of this space is the multi-guest feature. I don't generally use multi-guest very often. It depends on the circumstance, but we will still be here. I probably will go dark on Monday because I'm not going to cover the inauguration. I might instead post some content here, assuming that we're not, the algorithm will not go dark, because I'll remind people that it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then Tuesday, we'll make some decisions depending on what's happening. But we will be on YouTube. We may start to shift more of our energy and our time towards YouTube. Although, I don't know. I mean, I'm sad a little bit. You know, I'm angry, but my anger is just whatever the fuck it is. I don't even know anymore. But let me just double check on something real quick here. Okay. At 11 o'clock on our friend USMC Angry Vet, Harry Dunn will be their guest. For those of you who don't know who Harry Dunn is, he is a Capitol police officer who was there on January 6, 2021. He's got a new book out called Standing My Ground. He will be there along with Jolly Good Ginger and Matt, and they will have a conversation. That's at 11 o'clock Eastern time. I think we should all do that. So the box is open if anybody has any questions or comments. But, it's it's a sad day because, you know, one of the things that made this space so important to me was conversations like we just had, right? Not that we can't have these conversations in the future in a different application, but the algorithm of this app is what makes it so powerful. You know, the For You page, the multi-guest features, the interactivity, the simplicity. For, you know, for me, who was so technically efficient, said no one ever, to be able to figure it out on the fly, and even then, still simple, right? That's the part that's really going to bug me the most. I would ask that if you've ever supported anything that we've done here, you know, my pay-ups are above my head. We've got some changes that we may need to make going forward if we decide to focus our attentions on YouTube, although we don't know. That's the part that sucks. It's the part that sucks. We don't have a Supreme Court that supports the will of the people. You know, 170 million people use this app. 170 million people. 170 million. Half our country. Would somebody mind jumping in real quick? There's somebody knocking at my door. Is any mod available to come up real quick and just kind of keep the ship sailing? If anybody wouldn't mind. I'll be right back, guys. If there's AD. Okay. I'll bring up Moth. Yes. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Oh, yay, Moth. He got both of us up here.
It's also me.
Good morning, beloved. How are you?
Well, I'm okay. I'm
Yeah,
kind of scratching my head a little bit
I
after
know.
hearing some of those stories because I
Yeah.
think maybe that might have happened to me, but I'm not sure.
Same. I am literally sitting here recalling in this new framework. I don't know that there's probably there's so much more that we could talk about, and yeah, it's, as a person with ADHD, this is my new hyper focus, I think, for today. It really
You
just
know,
in caring for my clients, I needed this today. I really pride myself as someone who tries to take in as much information as I can to broaden my perspective on things in ways I've never thought of them before, and this was so clutch. I so needed this, and thank you, Steve, for making that connection. Thank you, Julia. She's probably not here anymore because she's probably got stuff to do, but wow, just wow.
you know what I do know
Yeah.
though? If there's one thing that I know right now, is that people need to be tapping the screen and sharing the live.
274K. Come on, y'all. I know you got better fingers than that. We had more likes with the thirst traps. Do we need to bring the thirst traps back up?
Oh man.
Please subscribe
You know, with
to our favorited channel. Please subscribe to YouTube. You'll find me on Byte Dance. The merch is still in the merch store. We're still raising money for some causes. There's we're raising money for the Red Cross chapter in Los Angeles, and you know, it's a great way if you find you need something to do. So
I really think we need to get the spicy calendars launched by tomorrow, just in case.
maybe we may need to. I know that there was a lot of thirsting on the there's a lot of thirsting on the other side too. So we had a lot of ladies step up yesterday, including our very own AD. Moth was getting spicy in the chat. You know, that was, you know, this is what happens.
I mean, Lainey
So
had me at hello.
Lainey, I know. So just
Laney,
like
yeah, Laney blew everybody out of the water in my
Yeah,
opinion.
my retinas are still heart shaped because of that.
so just as a programming note, so at 11 o'clock, our friend U.S. McAngry vet Matt. By the way, that was somebody who was lost. I had to give them directions. Somebody knocked at my door. It's hard to get lost in my town. There's like 25 houses.
Did you tell him to
Anyway,
go in the maple syrup direction?
it's you can't get maple syrup now.
Oh,
It's the middle of the winter.
oh.
It's stuck in the trees.
I don't know what winter is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So today at 6 o'clock tonight, AD and I will be hosting Facts After Dark. So again, we don't know. It could be TikTok After Dark. Who the fuck knows? But it's Facts After Dark tonight at 6 o'clock, and we're going to talk about what's the topic again? I forgot what we
You
said.
said something about why are we so antisocial?
Yeah. Why are
Yeah.
we so antisocial?
How did we
Right.
become so antisocial? And
Yeah, so we've got a
it's
lot of data that we can talk to that
a
goes
lot of
back
good
to
stuff.
back to COVID, and I think it's important now because this space has become community for so many people. So we're going to talk about that, part of the loneliness epidemic and how that relates. We're going to do that tonight at 6. Tomorrow we're going to have some fun. I know RJ's hosting a live in the morning, and then we're going to host a live tomorrow night because we still don't know what's going to happen come Sunday morning. We don't know. We really do not know. Midnight Sunday morning, we have no clue what's going to happen. So we're going to do we're going to party like it's 1999, so to speak, tomorrow night. So you'll find us all weekend long.
Well, I was just a child.
Yeah. Whatever.
We don't need to know.
Yeah, we don't need that. You can go back on your horse dog for that comment.
He's currently sleeping behind me. He's snoozing away.
Well, thank you to the two of you for jumping up. I'm gonna drop you down.
See you tonight, friend.
I appreciate you. See you tonight.
See you tonight.
Bye, Moth.
Bye.
All right. Look, this is the thing. We generally don't know what's going to happen between now and Monday. Again, like I said to you guys, I'm not going to cover the inauguration, but I just want to go out on the record. If this space no longer exists come Sunday, and if this happens to be the last time that we speak, 106,000 people have made a decision that what they get here has been either entertaining or beneficial or just fun or whatever it might be. I've taken what I've done here very seriously. It's important to me. The fact that you trust me, the fact that you appreciate the work we do, that means a lot. It does not go unnoticed. I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. I cannot thank you enough for that. To have people say for communities that I don't represent, to have people say that they feel safe here is an honor. To have people say that they feel like they can trust me is an honor. To have people say to me that they've learned a lot and they've appreciated the conversations or they've never thought about it in that regard is an honor. I've always asked you guys to think. I have always given you enough information, try to draw connections for you, to try to figure out a way to help us navigate through this potential hellscape that we have. That should not change. If you've learned anything from me, it's do not accept the status quo. Challenge everything. Do not take one source as the source of truth. Poke holes in it. Question it. Become involved. Don't be apathetic. Don't be lazy. Don't be entitled. People's lives are at stake in every walk of life. Bernie Sanders talked yesterday in a very candid interview about how oligarchs, and President Biden sent it, shared it in his farewell address. We are being taken over by the oligarch class. The end of our 250-year experiment with democracy is over as of noon on Monday. It is over. There is no going back from it. We can reinvent it, and we can come out of it on the other side with the prioritization of things that truly should fucking matter, right? Healthcare for all, an overfunded system of public education, clean air, clean water, protection for our environments, protection for marginalized communities, lifting children out of poverty, lifting women and single moms in particular out of poverty, providing a space where men feel like they can ask for help if they need it without being stigmatized, taking away access to firearms that are the number one cause of death for children in our society. If that's the kind of country that you want, then are you going to fight for it? Are you going to run for office? Are you going to go to school board meetings? Are you going to attend school board meetings? Are you going to volunteer in your communities? Are you going to help your neighbor? Or are you going to sit back and expect somebody else to do it? Because that's why we're in this place now. I love you all very, 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 very much. We'll see you tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Remember, at 11 a.m., we're going to raid our friend McAngry, U.S. McAngry vet. He's probably live now, but his guest will be Harry Dunn, and he'll be joined by Jolly Good Ginger as they talk about